Greetings from the Alexandrina Council. Let's meet the driving force behind the Alexandrina community. Chief Executive Officer, Andrew MacDonald. Mayor, Keith Parks. Deputy Mayor, Councillor, Michael Scott. West Ward, Councillor Bill Coomans. Councillor Lou Nicholson. Councillor Michael Scott. North Ward, Councillor Craig Maidment. Councillor Sue Miller. Councillor Christy Thornton. South Ward, Councillor Margaret Gardner. Councillor Millie Livingston. And finally, Councillor Peter Oliver.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our council meeting of the 15th of December 2025. The meeting is being conducted in accordance with the Local Government Act, its applicable regulations, codes and policies. An audio recording of the meeting will be made for minute-taking purposes and will last the length of the open meeting. The audio file will be available on the council website. We also have, of course, our friends from South Coast Television making a video recording of the meeting, which is available online. If you have any phones or smart devices, could you please turn them on to silent or turn them off so that we don't get interrupted during the meeting. I'd like to especially welcome the members of the gallery and thank you for giving up your time and making your interest in being here this evening. For those who are not familiar with this venue, the toilets are straight through there, just that little hallway there. You'll find everything there that you need. Now we need to do... so a couple of things, housekeeping things to do. So at a request of the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese MP, flags across Australia were flown at half-mast today in honour of the victims of the tragic events that took place at Bondi Beach in Sydney on Sunday the 14th of December. Today, in accordance with protocol, Council flew the Australian national flag at half-mast at all our facilities as a mark of mourning and respect. We extend our heartfelt condolences to all those affected by this tragedy. I'd like to welcome Councillor Michael Scott to his first meeting as the new Deputy Mayor. So congratulations and welcome, Michael. I'd also like to thank Councillor Peter Oliver for his contributions over the last 12 months and the support in the position of Deputy Mayor. And another thing which is really good to tell you, we've got our new microphones, so they work and they don't turn off automatically, and hopefully we'll get to the meeting and everybody will be able to hear us. So it's now complete, and we've got Zach from our RT team who's going to be here just keeping an eye and make sure there are no little hiccups, but this is the first time we've used them. So I'd like to welcome our elected members. We do have an apology from Councillor Thornton, who's requested a leave of absence, which should be on the screen. There it is, the grant a leave of absence for the 15th of December Ordinary Council meeting. So we just need somebody to move that. Move Councillor Livingston. The seconder, Councillor Oliver. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. So we have in attendance, we have our Acting Chief Executive Officer, Tash Hunt, our General Manager Infrastructure, Alan Harvey, Acting General Manager Corporate, Nikki Putland, Chief Financial Officer, Andrew Alderson, Manager Governance and Communications, Lachlan Miller, and our Minutes Secretary, Tanya Cregan, and some of our other staff who are here as required. Now, if you're able, would you please stand for the local government prayer and acknowledgement of country? Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to grant Thy blessing upon the works of this Council. Guide us in our deliberations for the advancement and the true welfare of the people of this district. The Alexandrina Council and its communities acknowledge the Narrandjeri, Paramount and Gardner people as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of our council district. Thank you. Just remind members, if you have a an interest before a matter that's before the council, you're asked to declare that to us before the meeting and also when the item comes up. We've got an advice from Councillor Miller that she has a conflict, a material conflict in item 9.9. Sorry? Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I declare a conflict of interest for item 9.9. I believe it's a general conflict of interest, material conflict of interest, and I'll be leaving the room due to my employment. Thank you.
So item 2 is the confirmation of minutes. 2. Sorry, Councillor Scott, you've got one too. Didn't know about that one.
Yes, I do. I have a conflict of interest within the confidential section, and I will expand on that when we reach the confidential section. And that's involving the Australia Day Awards.
And item 2 is confirmation of the minutes. 2.1 is the ordinary council meeting minutes of the 17th of December 2025. Recommendation that they be received as true and correct. Moved, Councillor Maidment. Seconder, Councillor Oliver. Any discussion relating to those minutes? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 2.2 is the Cemeteries Advisory Group minutes of the 5th of November 2025. The recommendation that they be received and noted. Moved, Councillor Gardner. Seconder, Councillor Maidment. Any discussion relating to those minutes? Not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 2.3 is the Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee minutes of the 13th of November 2025. And there's a recommendation that they be received and noted along with the confirmed meeting dates for 2026. Move, Councillor.
I'm happy to move.
Yep. Seconder, Councillor Nicholson. Any discussion relating to those minutes? No, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Against? Anybody? No, it's carried unanimously. 2.4 is the Australia Day Awards Committee minutes of the 3rd of December 2025, and there's a recommendation that they be received and noted. Move, Councillor Gardner. Second, Councillor Livingston. Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 2.5 is the Heritage Advisory Group minutes of the 4th of December 2025, and there's a recommendation that they be received and noted. Moved, Councillor Maidment. Seconder, Councillor Miller. Any discussion relating to those minutes? If not, I'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Item 3 is adjourned debate. There is none. Item 4 is presentations and deputations. So we have 4 this evening, and they're all on the same subject. So 4.1 is Mr. Graham Gibson relating to the Goolwa Township Neighbourhood Zone Code Amendment. So welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may ask to have an additional 5 minutes.
So members happy with that? About 5 minutes more? Yes or no? Hands up. Thank you. Yep, that's fine, Graham.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Members, thank you very much for having me tonight. My name's Graham Gibson. I'm the General Manager of Property and Development for Oakford Homes and Oakland Communities. Part of that is Craven Securities, the proponent for the Code Amendment tonight. With me tonight, I have Sarah Lowe, who's a Principal Consultant at URPS, who has prepared the Code Amendment, and James Atkinson from TSA Riley as a Retail Specialist. I'll bring them both forward now because I believe that most of the questions can be answered by those 2 professionals, so Sarah and James.
Thank you, and thank you, members. As Graham touched on, my name's Sarah Lowe. I'm a Senior Consultant at URPS, and joined by James Atkinson, who prepared the retail report We're acting on behalf of the proponent in preparing the Goolwa Township Neighbourhood Code Amendment. Over the last 2 years, URPS and the proponent have worked closely with the Department for Education, Goolwa Secondary School and Council administration staff to prepare the Code Amendment. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the objectives of the draft Alexandrina South Coast Growth Strategy and the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan. On the 7th of December, the Code Amendment completed an 8-week consultation period. During this time, we received 36 submissions, 10 survey responses, and held multiple drop-in sessions where we spoke face-to-face with the community. The Code Amendment seeks to apply the Masterplan Township Zone with the Emerging Township Activity Centre subzone. The zone and subzone have been selected on their ability to deliver Masterplan development outcomes and ensure predominantly residential development with associated supporting services. This could include a childcare centre, small-scale retail, consulting rooms and the like. The subzone is widely applied with the Masterplan Township Zone to provide flexibility for supporting services with residential development should there be demand. The concept plan proposed as the Code Amendment has provided a high-level indication of where a local activity centre would be located. I will hand over to James to speak to this in more detail.
Hello members. So I assume everyone's read the submissions relating to the retail analysis that URPS did. I won't get into too much detail about that. Time is limited. So what I've tried to do is just distill what I think are the key elements of the responses that I read. So there's 3 that I want to really focus on. So the first is that the Productive Economy Report, written in 2023, nominates a cap of 2,000 square metres for a northern centre, and that we should adhere to that on the basis of it sits in strategy. Secondly, that there's enough supermarket floor space in Goolwa after the planned expansion of the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre to support the township's growth for the next couple of decades. And then lastly, that the centre as proposed is in the wrong location, i.e. that it should be located further north. So the first point, so the Productive Economy, which the Productive Economy Report states a maximum of 2,000 square metres for a northern centre. So in early 2023, when that report was produced, state government projections had a population in the Goolwa Port Elliot SA2 in 2036 of 14,112. And so that formed the basis for the projections in that report. Since that time, DHUD, now DHUD, plus at the time, revised those population projections upwards. They now sit at 16,727 in 2036 and 19,500 in 2041. So there's a very big difference between what was proposed and what formed the basis of that Productive Economy Report and what the state government currently says is going to be the population of the Port Elliot, the Goolwa Port Elliot SA2 in 2036. So this is an increase of 2,600, or in other words, it's saying in 2036 there are going to be 20% more people than were envisaged at the time of the 2023 population projection. So it's a meaningful difference, and it's reasonable to assume most of that additional population. And in fact, I checked with DHUD, and I can confirm that most of that assumption of increased growth is based on an assumption that there will be significant residential development at Goolwa North. So in my view, this is a fundamental change that warrants re-examination of the strategic direction set out in that report. I think there's justification to consider a larger centre on the basis of the fundamentally changed assumptions. So the second point is that there's enough supermarket floor space in Goolwa to support the township's growth to 2041. So at a provision rate of around 0.41 square metres, which is the benchmark or the rule of thumb that's used in retail economics to determine what's an appropriate level of supermarket floor space provision on average. On that basis, Goolwa has enough floor space. However, I think in the case of Goolwa in particular, it's a bit more complex than that. As you're all aware, movement of residents from the north to the south of Goolwa is very constrained. You have Cadell Street and potentially some rat runs through the suburbs, but essentially you have to travel down that road there to get from the north to the shopping centre. So failure to deliver new floor space north of the township in the context of a rapidly growing population represents a threat. It's going to create, in my view, it will create adverse outcomes, urban design outcomes. It's going to create traffic congestion on Cadell Street. It's going to decrease amenity on the street and really affect livability in those areas to the north. And potentially bring cars into conflict with pedestrians. So facilitating a reasonably sized supermarket-based centre to the north of Goolwa will mean fewer residents having to funnel through Cadell Street to do their weekly shop and access population services. It should be borne in mind also that this code amendment is not about to bring new centre floor space to market in the near term. It's not a development. It's not a development application. The proponent has informed me that development of the centre will be timed and scaled to meet the market. So this means that should projected population growth not eventuate, or eventuate far slower than projected by state government, then the centre plans for the centre will be adjusted, and that time of delivery will be pushed out potentially the scale of the centre contracts. In other words, they'll meet the market, so they will adjust to market conditions. It won't mean new centre floor space tomorrow. And then lastly, the point that the centre's in the wrong location. So the consensus, I think, seems to be that the centre of some type will be required at Goolwa North at some point in the future, given that population growth that is projected. It's been stated, however, that the proposal locates this future centre in the wrong location. So I note firstly that the proposed centre would be in a similar location in relation to the future population of Goolwa North, as the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre is in relation to the populations of Goolwa Beach and Goolwa South. So it's relatively central, but still accessible to those suburban areas. I also add that the location as set out in planning documentation, which is to the north and east of the proposed site, should be interpreted as purely indicative. No body of work's been undertaken to determine that that is an ideal location for a centre. For centre owners and operators, accessibility to residents, visibility and main road access are important and critical. For these reasons, the proposed location represents a better option for a northern centre than one located further to the north and away from Alexandrina Road. So to conclude, since the development of the Productive Economy report, the state has revised upwards its population growth rates for Goolwa and Goolwa Port Elliot SA2. I believe this compels us to reconsider strategic guidance emerging from that report. It's also important to consider the impact of this population growth on the functionality of the town. It is a situation in which thousands of Goolwa North residents are made to travel through Cadell Street to access the town's principal centre acceptable. And then lastly, the proposed location, I believe, is the right one. It would balance objectives around optimising access to floor space for future resident populations at the same time as securing development viability. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any questions?
Yeah. I should invite you, of course, please.
Are there any questions? Councillor Maidment.
Am I on? Yeah, okay. So you're predicting Goolwa to double in size and within the next 12 years from possibly 8,000, roughly the population at the moment, to 16,000. That's another 3,500 houses out there in that development area. I was interested to hear that plans for the centre could be adjusted if that growth didn't occur. Now, what scares a lot of people is it'll end up being a petrol station or a convenience type store if that particular zoning goes ahead. So how can you sort of guarantee that that will be allocated space for a supermarket in perpetuity? You can't, can you?
That's a question I can't answer.
Yep.
Any further questions? No? So thanks very much. Thanks for your time.
Right, thank you.
So 4.2 is a deputation from Mr Craig Rowe regarding the Goolwa Township Neighbourhood Code Amendment. So welcome, Craig.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, members. Good to see you again. I'm here today, obviously, to speak in respect to this matter. I speak as a member of the community, not as a representative of any individual in Goolwa or any organisation or any client. These are purely my thoughts, and I thought that they would be reasonable to present them to council at this forum. Members, I'm going to cut my presentation short a little bit. I want to deal with just a number of key issues. The first key issue I see is the housing density that's being proposed in that area. The documentation provided by the proponents indicate that this is about 27 hectares and they're looking to produce about 400 allotments or dwellings in that area. I believe the only way that this proposal can achieve that aim is to provide apartments on top of any buildings in the activity centre. If we look at pure rates of development, and there's only about, in their concept plan, there's 12.9 hectares set aside for residential development. If you do the maths to that and you try to get 400 lots out of it, you're talking in excess of 30 dwellings per hectare. That is a substantial return, and it's certainly not consistent with any pattern of development that's been in this township or its environs. It's a significant increase on anything that's been in this township. In the council report, it suggested that the allotment sizes might average out at about 350 square metres. I'm thinking that it's more likely going to be significantly lower than that. If we're talking that ratio, that returns about 277 dwellings, which is 123 short of the suggested 400. So I'm assuming that the 123 again might be apartments that sit on top of any future supermarket or shops, or on top or behind. Just by comparison, members that have been around for a long time would know the Sea Change village, the old section, not the new section. The old section is about 10.3 hectares and has 200 tightly packed dwellings into it, at a rate of something like 19.4 dwellings per hectare. Now, doing variations on the subject land, you could come up with a number of rates of development, but we're talking somewhere between 20 and mid-30s. So it's significant. It is a significant change and it is packed in. Why the master-planned township zone? Well, one key reason, it doesn't contain any provisions that require minimum lot sizes. There are a lot of good benefits to the master plan zoning, especially in providing a range of houses close to facilities and shops. But in this case, we've just heard that perhaps the shops won't be there for 10 years. So my question on this one, and I'll talk about this a bit further, is why indeed rezone the land now for something that may not be needed for 10 years. So based on that, members, I think that in the short term, and that short term could be a decade or more, 15 years, I think that this land, I think the local activity centre should be removed from this proposal, and I believe that that land either stays, that portion of land, that 1.8 hectares in the northeastern corner of the subject land should stay as either deferred urban or simply go into neighbourhood zone. I also believe that 400 is dwellings or residents is an ambitious objective, and I think something more of the lines of 200 to 250 would best suit that area, taking into account, the need and demand for housing across the state. So we have to increase our production, and we need a vibrant building industry in this area for employment purposes, but we need to come up with a reasonable and appropriate objective, and I think that's more in kin with what's happening in the township. In terms of the local activity centre, I absolutely believe it's premature, and as we heard tonight, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's 4,000 square metres they're talking about, That's a 3,000 square metre supermarket. That's a full-blown supermarket, and 1,000 square metres of shops. Now and they could have commercial development. You know, the provisions of the subzone allow for commercial development such as hotels and petrol stations. So we're not sure what will go in there. We're not sure when. So if it's not needed for 10, perhaps 15 years...
Sorry, Craig, we've gone over the 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
You didn't ask for any extra time.
I meant to ask for 10 to start off with. I apologise. I got excited.
How much more time? How much more have you got?
Just 5 minutes if I could.
Everybody happy? Yep. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that we need to step back, and I believe that Council and other relevant planning authorities need to take a holistic approach to this. And we need a concept plan for the whole of North Goolwa. North Goolwa, we're having a long discussion about that over the years. It's time that we accept that there's going to be some form of development. Council's doing its growth strategy, and it's mapping out the sequences for development in North Goolwa, and I think it's time that we do a concept plan that tells us where there's going to be shops, tells us where there's going to be, or best be shops, schools, community facilities, open space, recreation facilities, roads, intersections. We need to have that. Developers need it. They need to have a base plan for the future to follow. So I'm asking Council to do that, to initiate that, a plan that can be set in place for people to follow. I accept and point out that that the retail analysis undertaken didn't take into consideration the approved expansion of the Goolwa village. Now that's something like 1,500 to 1,700 square metres of additional floor space based on that, and looking at the allowance that they made, or the suggestion they made in their report that 6,540 square metres of additional space would be required over time. If we take into consideration what's going to the Goolwa village, then that gets reduced to 5,000. If they're taking 4,000, that leaves 1,000 square metres of retail floor space to cover the other 823 hectares of land in North Goolwa. There's approximately 400 hectares of North Goolwa land, we'll call it North Goolwa land, on the western side of Alexandrina Road, and 450 on the eastern. And yet the major centre for the whole of the northern region is going to sit on the boundary, the current boundary of North Goolwa, 900 metres from the precinct in the main street and 2.2 kilometres to the village. In that case, following my position that is not required, and I believe, and giving the time to do the holistic plan, I think that the emerging township activity centre subzone shouldn't be endorsed by council. It should be removed. It sits over the whole of the affected area. It allows for development in the local activity centre of 3 levels up to 12 metres in height. I don't know of a building in Goolwa that does that. It sits in a prime location at the entrance to the township. It allows for development, residential development, specifically allows for residential development on top of commercial development. So there could be 2 levels, floors 2 and 3 could be apartments. And it allows non-residential land uses throughout the subzone. So I'm suggesting to council that serious consideration should be to reject that subzone. The main thing that I want to talk about was the entrance to the township. When the North Goolwa proposal code amendment came up, there was over 3,800 people made submissions opposing that. But 2 of the key issues were the character of the township and the entrance to the township. They were significant factors. And council's growth strategy now, we've been talking, or the councillors have been talking about an open buffer to the east, and there was talk about a tree line, which is the extension to Fleurieu Terrace. Well, that's 200 to 300 metres from the road. Now, we wouldn't be expecting a buffer of that magnitude to the east. But if you're going to have a buffer to the east...
Sorry, Craig, we're out of time. Can you just can you sum it up?
Yeah, if I can, members, I simply will be requesting that council seek a lower density to start off with, and that perhaps consider a neighbourhood zone or something that restricts the number of dwellings, land management agreement. Ask for the, say, deferred urban, undertake that holistic plan for North Goolwa, request the Western Line have a buffer 50 to 100 metres. And finally, I simply ask that in addition to responding to this as a council to the proponents, that I ask that you consider seriously preparing correspondence to the Minister, stating to the Minister that you have fundamental concerns about the rezoning of this land in the current form, and question the density and the need for this, and simply make it known to the person who's ultimately going to make the decision that you have, as a representative group of the council, serious fears about the impacts of this development. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Craig. Are there any questions? Discussion? Councillor Scott.
You were about to comment on the size of the buffer zone, and then you stopped. Then you were talking about 50 to 100 metres. I think they're talking 10 metres, and was that right in the plan?
In the council report, there's a mention of 10 metres. On this subject site, there is a large parcel of land that's owned by the Education Department for school expansion, etc. And schools, by their general nature, are open, fairly open land uses. There's lots of open space around the building, so that generally would provide some buffer. But it's the land beyond that. It's the land, for example, in the local activity centre, and it's the land beyond that to the north that someone will come back with a code amendment in the short time looking for something else. If we're going to try and protect the open rural character of the entrance of the township, we can't do it on one side. It has to be consistent on both sides. And we don't want to see, I don't want to see hundreds of metres of colour-bond fence 10 metres from the road into Goolwa. You know, we're a Cittaslow township. We have a special character. We need to preserve that, and colour-bond fencing is not going to do that. It also will provide the opportunity for footpaths on both sides of the road so people ultimately in the future can ride their bikes. It will provide a walkable access to the township, and we can have a landscape buffer. Trees, we need trees for corridors. So that's, I think it needs to be something significant.
Are there any further questions? No? Thanks very much, Craig.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time. Thank you. So the next deputation is Miss Amanda Price-McGregor from Greenlight Planning regarding the Goolwa Township Neighbourhood Code Amendment. So welcome, Amanda.
Hello, my name's Greg Stock. I work for Metcash in a role of property development manager. So I want to just keep it fairly simple before we get going.
Do you need more than 5 minutes?
We will. Yeah. We will need 10 minutes, but I'll be as brief as possible.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to be quite clear and quite simple. There was one thing missing out of the retail analysis, and that is the development of the Goolwa shopping centre and the development of the new food land in Goolwa. So as you can see, there's a render on the screen there. Our current size of our footprint is 710 square metres. The new development will go to 1756. Now, the project itself is a $10 million project, which got development approval last year. So that was a key thing missing in that report, is that we are behind the development and the growth of Goolwa as an independent retailer. So part of our plans of building this new site is that we continue to trade in the old site. So that will be trading right up until the new site is operational. So there'll be no full service for the community. And part of this development is also the expansion of the Woolworths area, where there will be a direct-to-boot development, and the BWS is also increasing in their size. So as you can see, the shopping centre, Metcash, Foodland themselves are all behind the growth of the shopping centre. We believe that the council's report in 2023, there's substantial investment, redevelopment and upgrades occurring already in the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre. I'll hand over to Amanda now, but I just wanted to make it quite clear. I'll run through some quick slides of what it looks like. Now, building of this starts, or already has started, in the Woolworths part of the development and the BWS, and the Foodland development will be starting in March/April of next year. And this floor plan here gives you an indication, and the old box will eventually be demolished and turned into other specialty retailers, where the new box shaded in yellow, the larger box there, will be the new larger supermarket servicing the community. This is the floor plan, quite a lot bigger than the current retail offer in Foodland. And that's the imprint of what it looks like. So the design of it, there's more car parks into the shopping centre with a redesign of the car park, and a more of a mall where Foodland and the shopping mall and Woolworths will be connected by a lovely walkway and mall area. We are all about local. We're an independent local retailer, have been for many, many years, and we will continue to be very local minded. So I'll hand over to Amanda now, who'll go into a little bit more detail.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Thank you, members, for your time this evening, Mayor Parkes and all of the elected members. From the outset, I do want to emphasise that my clients are supportive of additional residential development in Goolwa, and in time, and once the demand is demonstrated, additional small-scale local retailing to the north of Goolwa to support that future community. And of course, that is all highly contingent on the provision of much-needed infrastructure, water, sewer and power, as this council is no doubt acutely aware. In 23-22, Council undertook significant research and analysis to inform its 2023 Productive Economy, Land Supply and Demand Report, your blueprint for the future growth and development of your towns. That report recommended an additional 11,400 square metres of retail floor space, representing a doubling of the existing floor space, would be needed by 2041. It also said that Cadell Street and the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre are to be retained in prominence as the commercial and social focal points of your town. That any new centre to the north of Goolwa needed to be within the township boundary identified for future growth and needed to be subordinate to those existing centres, and no more than 2,000 square metres with a supermarket included. The amenity of the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre was needed to be improved, along with more intensive land use of that centre. Middleton was to be the focus of future retail floor space expansion to lessen the demand on Goolwa centres. So, Goolwa Village Shopping Centre needed improvement, needed more intensive use of that land, tick, that's happening now. And Cadell Street and Goolwa Village needed to be retained in prominence, and any new northern centre no more than 2,000 square metres, including the supermarket. The applicant will have you believe that they are proposing a local centre. But what they have not focused on is that their structure plan actually shows 1.8 hectares or 18,000 square metres of retail, commercial and mixed-use land. And they have not fully explained that the Code Amendment seeks to apply the Emerging Township Activity Centre zone over the entire affected area. And of course, as you would know, the subzone takes precedent over the zoning itself. So this means that there would be no cap on the retail floor space or no limit to the type of retailing that could be proposed in this location. For example, large-scale fast food with drive-throughs, large retail fuel outlets and the like are all envisaged land uses with this subzone. This subzone has the power to change the entire character and preservation of the Gateway Township to Goolwa. Large multinational players like Coles can and do land bank. The proponents' retail opportunities paper in the Code Amendment lacks any retail catchment analysis and rigour and advocates for 3,000 square metres supermarket and 1,000 square metres of additional retail. And of course, this is double the size in Council's recommended in Council's productive economy paper. Even if the 20% population increase that we've heard from the proponent tonight does occur, if we took that and added 20% to the retail figure, that would be 2,400 square metres, not 4,000 square metres, and certainly not 18,000 square metres. It is our strong view that this Code Amendment will undermine the existing retail centres hierarchy of Goolwa, including Cadell Street and the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre. The approved 2020 redevelopment plans that Greg has talked you through tonight were not even referenced in the proponent's 2025 Code Amendments documents. Either a glaring error or omitted for some other reason. In our view, there is considerable work to be done by this third-party proponent, starting with a thorough and independent retail catchment and demand analysis to ascertain if any retail is actually required to the north of Goolwa at all. In summary, and for the reasons outlined above, my clients are recommending this council takes a strong position on this Code Amendment, including recommending to the Planning Commission and the Minister the complete removal of the Emerging Township Activity Centre subzone for the entire affected area. We now seek this council's support. We'd like to thank you for listening to us tonight and happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Amanda. Are there any questions? No. Councillor Maiden.
So you're asking us to advocate against this proposal. What is your clients doing to advocate on your behalf directly to the Minister at this point in time?
Thank you for the question. I think what we're saying is that we're supportive of residential development in the northern Goolwa area. We're fully aware that it's been deferred urban for many years now, so we're certainly supportive of residential development. Probably question the density that's being proposed and the appropriateness of that density in this location. Certainly, as we've said, perhaps once demand can be established, and that needs a proper retail catchment analysis, local retailing in the future. So what we're asking you to do is advocate for the removal of the Emerging Township Activity Centre subzone, and you should feel confident that we'll be doing the same to prosecute that case.
Any further questions? No. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. Just on Councillor Vaidman's question, so I understand submissions have closed.
Yes.
And we have just been given grace to... So just following up on that, have you made a submission to the effect of what you're talking about tonight, or you're asking us to do that for you?
No, absolutely, we have done that too. Absolutely, we have done that. Definitely put in a submission by the date, and certainly encouraging Council to consider the position that we have taken for the reasons outlined.
Any further? No. Thanks very much,
Thank
Amanda.
you very
Thanks
much
very much for your time.
Thank you.
So the final deputation is from Julie Jansen from Masterplan, and it's regarding the Goolwa Township Neighbourhood Code Amendment. So welcome, Julie. Now, do you need 10 minutes?
I would endeavour to keep it less than 10 minutes, but it may extend more than 5. So elected members, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Julie Jansen from Masterplan, and I do represent the owners of the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre. We have actually made written submissions to the state government along the lines pointing out many of the things that you've already heard this evening. So I'll endeavour not to be too repetitive, but to reinforce our concerns in relation to the code amendment. If I may just start with a couple of facts. The Goolwa Village Shopping Centre is 2.8 hectares in area. And I say that to compare it to the 1.8 hectares that the code amendment does illustrate in the structure plan. So, you know, we're talking about 2/3. Now, the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre is appropriately zoned in an activity centre, and one of the premises of our state planning system is very much a centres hierarchy. And hence we're extremely concerned that the code amendment doesn't appropriately deal with the centres hierarchy. The Goolwa Village Shopping Centre, as we've heard from previous speakers, look, for round figures, let's just say it's about 6,000 square metres. So when we're hearing about 4,000 square metres of retail floor area proposed in Goolwa North, we're actually speaking about two-thirds of the existing centre being able to be developed, at least in that area. If I can just reinforce a number of the points that have already been made, the emerging township activity centre subzone will apply to the entire area, which, as we've heard, enables and allows for all forms of retail type of development, commercial development to occur in that area. The placing of a dot on a concept plan which calls it a local activity centre is very critical, because that doesn't necessarily limit the area that is proposed or could be allocated in a future time for an activity centre. And one of the things that I'd just like to highlight, if we read the policy of the emerging township activity centre subzone, is that it's an activity centre within a master plan communities, including a range of land uses to provide services at a local and neighbourhood level. Now, the code amendment uses a range of terms when it speaks of retail activities. It uses small scale, it uses local centre. In other occasions, it uses neighbourhood centre. So when we speak of the centres hierarchy, there are 5 levels of centres hierarchy. I mean, we've got our regional centres, obviously in Adelaide. It comes down, a neighbourhood centre is the 4th in the hierarchy, and a local centre is actually the 5th in the centre hierarchy. The Greater Adelaide Regional Plan and our planning strategies speak about 1,500 square metres as being the appropriate area for a local centre. And that would actually require an area of between 5,000 and 6,000 square metres. It doesn't require 1.8 hectares. So the other thing to look at in terms of, and it's been said previously, the other thing to look at is the range of land uses that may be developed under an emerging activity centre subzone. That would include a hotel, a petrol filling station, a library, I think a cinema and those sorts of things, as well as the retail activities, as well as some of those community services that we're likely to see, the childcare centres, etc., that are appropriate around a centre. But the other thing to note, and it's been said previously, is 3 levels. And I won't get into built form or character or anything of that, but when we think of the capacity of, if we've got 1.8 hectares, even if 50% of that was actually developed for retail, commercial type of activities, and 3 levels, that's 27,000 square metres of floor area. Now that's a bit of scaremongering. However, it just goes to show that the emerging activity centre subzone, the emerging township activity centre subzone, doesn't provide clear guidance about area the floor, not only the site area, floor area, and the only real limit is actually 3 stories. So all of those things combined, to me, and I'll reinforce the previous speakers, means that the emerging township activity centre subzone is inappropriate in this area. Our submission that we have written to the state government indicates if it is going to have an activity centre in that location, that we actually seek for that to be a defined local activity centre zone, because that has reduced, activities, land uses that could occur, as well as reduced floor area in terms of potentially having that area of 1,500 square metres. It would give council in the future, when you get land divisions and development applications, a greater degree of certainty if it had a zone such as that. We've heard from previous speakers about the gaps in the retail analysis that was done, or the retail report that was done. I'm hoping that the members have been provided, I'm sure they have, a copy of the Deep End Services retail analysis, which our client has actually engaged the services of Deep End to do that greater detail. It's a very detailed retail analysis. It actually picks up a number of the points that have already been made, that the current development for the Goolwa Village Shopping Centre wasn't included. It includes greater detail in terms of the ratio of supermarkets in the whole region, and that it clearly states that the current Goolwa Village Shopping Centre proposal will actually meet the demand for at least the next 10 years, and that if in the future retail analysis is required, retail development is required in the area to Goolwa North, that should only be in the vicinity of a local centre and 1,500 square metres. Now that detailed analysis is with you, and I would encourage you to have a look at that moving forward in your deliberations. We'll just reinforce that a supermarket of 3,000 square metres, as we've heard, Woolworths at Goolwa Village is about that size. The Foodland, 3,000 square metres, if that's proposed at Goolwa North, would be 4 times the existing size of the Foodland currently, and 70% larger than the Foodland that is proposed. We also question the density of development that's being proposed in that area, and particularly given the large area of land that's actually owned by the Minister of Education, and the Code Amendment doesn't clearly state what the arrangements are and the land availability for that. So members, in summary, and reinforcing a number of the points already made, we don't believe that emerging township activity centre subzone is appropriate in this location. We would advocate and request that the council actually consider advocating for that to be removed, and that you further reinforce the importance of the centres hierarchy which the state government planning system is based on, and protect the Goolwa Village and the Main Street. Thank you, members. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions? No?
Terrific.
All good. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, item 5 is petitions. There are none. Item 6 is questions with notice. 6.1 is a question from Councillor Oliver regarding carried forward capital expenditure. 6.2 is a question from Councillor Miller regarding roadside vegetation management outside townships. And they are the questions, and the answers to those questions are contained within the agenda. Item 7 is questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Coomans.
Thank you, Mayor Parks. Oh, it's working. We have a state election on the 21st of March next year, and many of the community groups in Finnis electorate are arranging candidate forums to enable those who have or will nominate for the seat to address audiences in the various towns about their positions on various matters and answer important questions during a Q&A session by the community members who attend. The Mount Compass Walmora Community Centre is one of those and is hosting the forum on the 10th of February, and without charge to anyone, as other groups in other places seem to be doing. I understand there is also a forum to be held in the council-owned Centenary Theatre and another in the Port Elliot RSL Hall, both hosted by groups, but council staff have decided that the organisers will be charged full rates. Given the importance of our connections with state and federal politicians in relation to projects and grant funding and the community interest in their potential state representatives, will the CEO, under delegation, seriously consider providing the theatre and the hall at no cost to the organisers? I'd be disappointed if I need to lodge a notice of motion in January.
Through the Mayor, I'll take that on notice from you and consider that. Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Worship. I've got two questions. The first one came via a resident who asked me about tree planting occurring on weekends, and I just wanted to check. This was in Malang, and if it's indeed true that why we're planning, council administration are planting trees on weekends, and they said it when this gentleman asked the staff, he was told there's 700 trees to be planted and they're way behind. So is that correct, that we're planting watering trees on weekends?
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question. Yes, we are. We do have staff working at weekends at the moment, particularly on watering of our juvenile tree stock. Due to the conditions that we've been facing recently, we've had to... I'll go back one step. Normally, we would water new juvenile trees for a 3-year period to allow them to bed into routine and then obviously establish themselves for the coming seasons. We do have a few locations where those young trees are still under stress, so we've had to expand that program. This has meant that we've had to increase the hours that we put into that program to accommodate that. We are unable at this stage to run additional water trucks because we don't have the personnel to run those water trucks during the week, so that's hence we're there on the weekends. I'm aware of that happening from a tree planting perspective. We do have a target to get to. It's always been an ambitious target. We've never shied away from that. We've always stated that it was a lot to do, and so we are still working to achieve that outcome, which means that we also have those same staff doing the last bit of tree planting at the moment. With regards to payment, we do have an accommodation for overtime through our field services budgets because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when we're going to need that time. We're utilising that now.
Thank you, Worship. I think I'll put a question on notice for January. The other question that I have relates to the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Regional Development, Infrastructure and Transport inquiry into financial sustainability and funding for local government. Does Council Administration know if the Local Government Association of South Australia is considering revisiting the submission they made back in May 2024 to that Standing Committee? That inquiry was on local government sustainability, and it lapsed at the last federal election, but now it's being revisited to encompass, have a sharper focus on not just local government fiscal sustainability, but also on local government funding. And I think that is a very critical element of this inquiry. So I'm keen to know if we can find out if the Local Government Association will be revisiting that to really speak to the funding that local government gets as a percentage of taxation in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, it was a topic at the LGA AGM earlier in November when that meeting occurred. The National President came and spoke to the councils in attendance. With the inquiry, they're not asking anyone to resubmit application or submissions that have already been submitted, so all that information will still be considered, but they're certainly inviting new ones. I'll have to take on notice the part what LGA South Australia's position is and if anything will be submitted.
Are there any further questions? Not. Thank you. We know item 8, which is notice of motion. 8.1 is a motion from Councillor Oliver regarding the planning process and consideration of real cost reduction strategies. Councillor Oliver, you wish to move it and you wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor. This is a very straightforward motion. It simply asks for discussion and consideration of additional cost reduction strategies at the right time as part of the prescribed planning process. Mayor, I'm not only concerned about financial sustainability, but I want to ensure that we have the ability to fund new key strategies, including the ROS and climate emergency, and be able to pay for important things like new infrastructure to meet our growing needs. I want us to be able to fulfil the hopes and aspirations of the community. So please, let's agree to make a time to discuss and consider these opportunities further. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Maidman? Speak. Yep.
I think we should at least have a discussion around this, and a workshop to this effect wouldn't go astray early in the new year. And I do note that there are some continuous improvement strategies already in place, and the administration comments speak to that very comprehensively, so we can drill down on those as well at the same time.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Worship. I think the report that, or the administration comments that go along with this motion are so valuable to remind us as an elected body, and also to demonstrate to our community the initiatives that we've already undertaken. Cost reduction is an important priority for this council in considering our long-term financial sustainability, and we've done a lot of work already. I think a further discussion would be a great opportunity to put all of this work on the table and have a discussion, and I hope that we might be able to use it as an opportunity to invite our community to come along and really help them understand what we have done. I've had some recent discussions with a number of members of our community who don't understand the work that we've already done and don't understand that this is a priority, and it's difficult to explain. As you can see in the comments, it's complex, and you can't really explain it in a couple of sentences. So I really think it would be a great opportunity to invite our community to come along and hear that discussion and understand what we've already done and what else we could do. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate Councillor Oliver bringing this forward. I just do have a couple of comments to make. I do think, and I have no issue with this and I'll be supporting it, but I think it is really important to note, as set out on page 11 and 12 in this agenda, the recent initiatives that we've been undertaking to crystallise Council's commitment to efficient, effective and appropriate service delivery to the community, what is already in place and what is planned. Further, the uncompensated cost shifting from other tiers of government via the creation of legislative and non-discretionary roles and obligations remains a significant concern for the sector, and this cost shifting continues to drive upward cost pressure on Alexandrina Council. I don't think you can underestimate that point, and it's the reason why I asked my question without notice, because back in May 2023, I think it was, or I did ask that the local government's submission to that former inquiry by the Standing Committee at a federal level was noted. You know, there's a lot of evidence that says that local government diversity, changing population trends, varied funding bases, infrastructure networks place increasing demands on a council's financial sustainability. It's evident in the context of increased service delivery obligations and cost shifting. Local government's role continues to evolve and expand, and beyond that traditional purview of rates, roads and rubbish. Local governments are increasingly relied upon to provide services and manage complex infrastructure assets. some of which were formerly the responsibility of Commonwealth and state government. So I really commend this. I would imagine that we would have been doing this anyway, but it's so important that the context of asking for rate reduction is clearly understood by our community, whether they want to understand it or not. There's other challenges too. Expanding the financial impact of those expanding service delivery obligations and cost shifting. There's restrictions associated with revenue raising and access and equitable distribution of grants, which I did mention. Co-contributions inhibit financially challenged councils to access grants, and workforce recruitment and retention, including skills and shortages. So there is a very, very difficult discussion that we're going to have with our community, and it is around service levels and what they're willing to pay for. There's not a budget that I've been involved in so far that there hasn't been more asked for. So this won't be an easy discussion, and I hope that the community does come along for the ride and does keep an open mind about the reality of you can reduce rates, which is, I mean, I'm a ratepayer too. I've been a ratepayer here for 20 years and I've been closely watching what we spend our money on. But the reality is, without understanding where the money comes from and how rates are calculated, and understanding what our community expects from us and the cost to deliver those services, it will be a very difficult discussion. And I'm really looking forward to having this, and I will support this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Coomans.
Thanks, Mayor Parkes. I think this is worthy of consideration. If we're really serious about reducing the bottom line, but noting that the response to Councillor Oliver's question on notice about freezing all new capital projects, this needs further consideration as it may not apply to all of them. I've also considered the issue of having a dedicated task force rather than just having a few workshops, or maybe a workshop to get started. But it seems to me that this needs to be driven by a dedicated group, maybe a cross-section of EMs and staff, and maybe even a representative from the Audit and Risk Committee, because that will enable us to really delve deep into the council financial structure and maybe identify options for consideration, and also investigating alternate sources of funding. What could also be investigated is combining more of council's functions with our two neighbouring councils, as we do currently with things like planning approval and health and the like. And maybe we even plan to look at merging with some of our adjacent councils to reduce costs. That might also be an option. So I'll support the recommendation.
Any further discussion? Before you have your right of reply, Councillor Oliver, a couple of things. A lot of the stuff in your motion is already being worked on, as you know. And Andrew McDonald, our CEO, and Andrew Alderson have spent an enormous amount of time working on Council's financial position and made some great inroads. I think one of the problems we have is getting the message out to our community that the ESCOSA report on this council was based on a business plan that had not been adopted. The plan was never supported by council. The new business plan, which the two Andrews have put together and we've approved, puts Alexandrina Council in a sustainable position. This council is not unsustainable. We do have to look at costs and we do have to work on getting it down. The thing people forget is we've got a federal government and a state government. The federal government collect all the taxes in Australia. Local government used to get 1% of the gross tax revenue. For the last 6 years, we've got 0.5%. And it's only the last 2 years it's been indexed. In the meantime, the federal government, I can't imagine how much their tax revenue has increased by. And we've gone backwards, but we're getting asked to do more. Now, we've got a state election on the doorstep. one of the things you can ask, and our community should ask, people who are standing for state election, is what are you going to do from a state position on the fair and equitable distribution of the financial assistance grants? Because we've got to get the money from the feds, but the problem is it comes to the state and they distribute it. And some of these councils get absolutely not enough money, literally, to run their vehicles, never mind anything else. It's totally unfair, and unfortunately our community don't understand it. But this is really good stuff, Councillor Oliver. It's what we have to strive for, and we do have to look what we're doing. They've done a great job so far, and we understand from Andrew and Andrew that they know there's a lot more work to do. So that's good. So you want to sum up? Councillor Oliver doesn't want to reply, so that ends the discussion. So I'll put the motion to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Item 9 is administration reports, and 9.1 is a council submission on the Goolwa Township Neighbourhood Code Amendment. Matt, did you wish to give us a bit of an update on that report?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just wanted to provide a quick update on the submissions that have been received by the designated entity in relation to this code amendment. So the code amendment, when we were drafting the report, was still in the consultation phase, and thanks to RPS, who have represented the applicant, they've provided us with an update of what the final figures are, so I thought I'd just share them with you tonight. So consultation closed on the 7th of December 2025. Council were allowed further time to put in its submission. A total of 36 submissions were received, 11 from key stakeholders and 25 from community members. Of the 11 key stakeholder submissions, a couple of which you heard from tonight, 5 strongly support the proposal or support it with some concerns, 4 are neutral or had no objections, and 2 were opposed. Of the 25 community submissions, there were 7 in support or support with specific concerns, and there were 18 that were opposed. And a general summary of the concerns that were raised include essential infrastructure provision, including capacity and sequencing, housing density and allotment sizes, road and traffic impacts as well as pedestrian safety, retail area size and mix, education and community services, open space provisions, flora and fauna protection, and residential interface, site contamination and stormwater management. Just the last thing I wanted to provide as an update is just to reiterate that Council's role in this process, we're not the authority for it. Council is a relevant stakeholder like some of the others that we've heard from tonight, and the role for Council is to prepare a submission to forward to the designated entity.
Thank you, Matt. So we have a recommendation that Councillor Mayman, you wish to move that?
If you'd take a variation to that motion, I'd like to present that, please. That Council advise the designated entity, this will be part 3 by the way, Council advise the designated entity, the State Planning Commission and the Minister for Planning, that it strongly opposes the inclusion of any retail activity centre or the emerging township activity subzone on the land subject to this code amendment.
You want to speak to it? Yeah.
Just listening to all the information earlier on in the evening, personally, I have no problem with residential in that area. I do believe that there needs to be a holistic approach to proposed commercial development for all of Goolwa North. I have some lived experience in my own town of Strathalbyn where you have an original neighbourhood zone which then gets a developer excited to push the boundaries and then go for something a bit bigger and greater, and commercial development happening on the site now. And I do believe that the activity centre is way before its time. It's probably 10 years before its time. And if that's land banked and someone comes along in the future within that 10-year period and decides they want to put a petrol station there, and then you'll have another retail hub there, you'd have fast food outlets and all sorts of things going on, just like there is in my own town.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second it, please, and I support Councillor Maidment's variation. I too would like to add a couple of points which I provided earlier. Hoping that you've got those. Subject to the following amendments. 1, application of the neighbourhood zone across the affected area in lieu of the Masterplan Township zone. 2, include a building height technical numerical variation TNV to set a maximum building height of 8 metres and 2 storeys. And thirdly, the inclusion of a 100 metre wide landscaping buffer along the extent of Alexandrina Road to protect the gateway entrance to the township. And in addition to part 3 there, I think it would be appropriate to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer the power to make amendments to the draft submission contained in the attachment. Thank you.
Councillor Maidment, you happy with that included?
Is he requesting permission to vary it?
Yeah.
Not to amend it?
No, to vary it. And Councillor Maidment, are you happy with that? Councillor Maidment, you happy with those changes? So you need to leave the meeting. So we see leave of the meeting to include those variations. So everybody in favour? Yeah. Against? So we've got to move and say, now wish to ask a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wonder, with the additions, if we may seek some advice regarding what the implications of those will be, just so that we have a little bit of extra time as elected members to go through what they mean, because they're not in the report and the agenda that we had prepared.
Through the Mayor, I'll hand over to our Group Manager Regional Development, Matt Atkinson, to answer that.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Just looking at the wording that has been put forward, there's a few issues in there that we should probably go through. I think the change from a Masterplan Township zone to a neighbourhood zone, the implications of doing that does mean that you can set technical numerical variations which could guide the density of the development within that area. The counterside to that is that what the Township Masterplan zone does quite well is allows for a fair bit of flexibility. And one of the things we've been pushing for a while now is to try and increase the amount of affordable housing that we have. If we've got all large allotments of the same sort of development, we're going to find it very difficult to be able to provide some housing diversity within this area. We've tried very hard within the existing township, particularly within the established neighbourhood zones, to protect the current character of Goolwa. And there are opportunities within, as Goolwa expands, provided that we're able to introduce master plans or concept plans to ensure that development is low scale around the perimeter, where you've got some interface, and have targeted areas where a higher density may be appropriate. The Masterplan Township, I think, does allow for that quite well. And the other thing I would say, I think in fairness, that we're dealing with effectively Oakford Homes. Oakford Homes have a strong track record. Their core business is to deliver houses on reasonable size allotments. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing in Strathalbyn and Goolwa North for a period of time. So I don't think by applying the Masterplan Township zone that we should be leaping to the worst possible scenario that zone might allow. I don't think that is likely to be the case. What's important is that we can work with the developers and the landowners to create concept plans that are going to be more viable for our community. So there's a fair bit of information there around the actual zoning. Similarly, the building height, technical numerical variation to 2-storey would be consistent with the majority of Goolwa. I don't think we've got too many buildings, Australasian maybe, that exceeds 2 storeys in height. That said, if it was in behind the school, where school's got some quite tall buildings, maybe a slightly higher building height could be okay. But that is a possibility to go down that path. The 100-metre wide landscaping buffer is an interesting one. I think in the actual report and in the submission, we've talked about the gateway overlay. That doesn't specify, I think 10 metres might have been talked about earlier, but it also looks at treatments so that you don't get the colour-bond fences facing the main road. There's vegetation, there's other ways of providing buffers. So this is quite a shift from what we were proposing. Interestingly, with the consultation feedback that we've received, we think that the residential component of this code amendment is actually quite good. The concern that we've had from an administrative perspective is in relation to the retail element and the timing. We've worked really hard with this chamber to work through sequencing for how we deliver housing. I think it's important we do a similar exercise to determine when and where retail should be rolled out across Goolwa as well. So, sorry, there's a whole heap of thoughts just there. I'm not sure whether I've answered the question, but happy to take any further questions.
Did you wish to speak to it? We'll get back to you now. Councillor, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've listened to a lot of people in the community. This has been a big issue for a long time. I guess we all need to recognise the future growth that we're going to have to go through. It's being forced upon us. So I say yes to appropriate development of North Goolwa, but I say no to a satellite city. Thank you.
So is there any further discussion? Councillor Coomans.
Thanks, Mayor Parkes. I guess mine's a question, and my concerns are minimum allotment sizes and who has the authority to specify what that will be. Will it be council or will it be council staff? I'm rather concerned that there's a development in Middleton where it looks like all of the houses will be facing inwards, and we'll be up for a fence of some sort along the main road, which we must, I think we've got to avoid that sort of thing. The option might be that rather than have 100 metres of buffer landscaping, that it's actually create a slip road parallel to Alexandrina so that the houses are all facing Alexandrina, ensure that happens. Where does all that sort of decision making happen, and what involvement does council have?
Through the Mayor, to be able to get that level of detail, we'd need to have a relatively strong concept plan. I think it's rare that the Minister and the State Planning Commission would endorse something that's that fine-grained. So the short answer to that question is there's still the development application process that would need to be undertaken, and it's an important role for our development assessment planners, and it's one that we're working through in the Middleton example that you used to really ensure that the interface and the way developments are seen from external to the site. It's a really important consideration. So the concept plan, we can include it. We can recommend that a concept plan be included. And we are more broadly through our housing strategy and local area plans as we move forward. We've already got budget and we're starting that process. We will be coming back to council with an overall concept plan or master plan for the entire Goolwa North area, which you did hear from one of the earlier speakers tonight. So that's part of the work that we are doing currently. Without that higher level concept plan, it's quite difficult. We are relying on our development assessment staff to be pushing for better outcomes.
Another question?
I was going to speak.
You speak. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yep. Look, I think I support most of what's being proposed. It really reflects what the deputations are saying. I'm really concerned about minimum allotment sizes. The last thing we want is a Seaford or a Mount Barker in Goolwa. I'm just a bit worried about 100-metre landscaping, and I wonder whether we could reword that such that sorry about the guessing, some assurance that housing face the main road, Alexandrina Road, and it could be you know, a landscaping buffer, or an alternative would be a slip road rather than that, so to ensure that happens. I'm a bit concerned. I'm a bit concerned about this. I can see the basis of it, but I'm not sure this is the way we should be going in total.
Any further discussion? Councillor, maybe you've spoken, you've closed the question, you can have a question.
A question for Manager Strategic Planning. Can you give us an indicative cost of what affordable housing is, and would there not be enough infill within Goolwa to accommodate affordable housing in other areas? Because this is going to be a brand new development, and it could be high end as well, so it could be very costly.
Through the Mayor, I think the current figure for affordable housing is approaching $500,000. It was about 470,000. Although I note that as part of, and this is an Adelaide example rather than a regional example, the Southwark development, they've just identified their affordable housing with a price point starting from about $670,000. It doesn't apply the same way in rural areas, but the issue that we have is that the land value itself is approaching the threshold for affordable housing. So as soon as you want to build something on there, you're already going over that amount. And the challenge in the region, I think, it's not just about affordable houses to purchase. So affordable housing is defined under the Planning Development Infrastructure Act. I think the other area we need to be mindful of is the lack of affordable rentals that we have within the region. That's probably a bigger issue. That's an area that we're exploring at the moment about what opportunities are there for things like build-to-rent schemes. They're generally difficult where you can't get the appropriate yield, but we're starting to see them popping up in other regional centres across Australia. So we're having a close look at what other areas are doing in that space to see whether there's a model that could fit this council area, and that'll be something we'll come back to council with as part of our local affordable housing plan.
Scott, you had a question?
Long question. There's a lot to be said here. What we're actually looking at here is the future of Goolwa. And 3 or 4 generations ago, in about 1839, 1840, they did the same thing. And what we're talking about, what we're looking at, is going to last for 200 or 300 years. So we need to get it right. And we need to think beyond just the short term of this or that. It was mentioned earlier that you didn't want trafficking down Cadell Street to get to the shopping centre, so we need the shopping centre on the top side of Goolwa. Well, the bulk of the houses on the top side of Goolwa on the eastern side of the railway line. So don't put the shopping centre on the western side of the railway line, because everybody's going to have to cross the railway line from the top side of Goolwa to get to the shopping centre. That's just a start. Or else you'll put another shopping centre on the eastern side of the line when that gets going, so we'll have little shopping centres everywhere. Now, we've got to be a whole lot smarter than that. The railway line potentially, and I hope, will be a very important part of the future, because I'm hoping that we can go back to rail and have a viable rail service if the population grows like is being inflicted upon us. Hopefully we can look at a rail, so not just a steam ranger, but a proper viable railway service. And we need to be considering that anyway. Even if we haven't got it in the next 30 or 40 years, we need to keep it in the back of our mind that that could be quite a busy railway line in the future. So let's put that in across the top of our chart and work from that. But it's pointless having people trafficking across from there if you do put it there, in and round and up the main road. There'll be traffic coming in and out, and the locals will be trying to shop on the main road. I mean, it's planning at its glorious worst, I believe, and totally inappropriate. And as a council, I think we've got to be very, very careful. We're right at the sharp end now, and we've got to be there guiding this and get it right for the generations that follow us. Not just say, oh, well, that's all right, we'll put that there. I know what's going there. There'll be a petrol station with some EV charging spots on it. There'll be a McDonald's so you can have breakfast on the way out. And it'll be like the start of a lot of other towns. And I only had an overseas visitor saying to me the other day, don't let Goolwa get like any other towns in America. The great thing when they come to Goolwa is that it is not covered with all this sort of thing. And we have the opportunity of doing that now, and this is the start of the whole thing happening. So let's be really smart. I know we've recommended that that comes out. Definitely take it out. We also need 10-metre buffer. I mean, that's just to comply with the regulation. 10 metres, that's 2 Callistaman Kings Park specials. Jammed together, overflow is about 10 metres. We want to do better than that to an entrance to a town. Why can't we have a nice entrance into the town? We've got an opportunity to get it right. Why don't we just spend a little bit of time and get it right? We've had to capitulate and say, yes, the town's going to get bigger, otherwise we would have lost the show altogether. But let's now steer it, and that's what I was saying to our planning, to Mr. Atkinson the other day, about guiding the whole thing and saying yes to this, but no to that. So we finish up with a town that we like the look of, even though it's going to have a lot of colour bond, I know, and it's something that our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will say, well, they were smart when they did that. That's all worked well, and it's worked well for 3 or 4 generations. So I support what has been said, and I think we need to do more work on it. And all the plans that come up, we've got to work on them very, very carefully to get it right, because we are it's going to set in concrete for 200, 300 years.
Is there any further? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I'm foreshadowing that I will move the original motion if I get the opportunity. I would have even been happy to live with Councillor Maidment's strongly oppose the inclusion, because we have the letter clearly says that Council was strongly opposing it. The addition by the seconder of this other information, I think, moves beyond what we've had the benefit of discussion in the agenda item. So I am going to vote this down, but I would like the opportunity to speak to say why. So this highlights for me the South Coast growth strategy decision needs to be made sooner rather than later. The development world is moving on without us. For 3 years we've been taking it slowly and carefully, and we need to now start making some decisions. The growth opportunities, there was a growth strategy document done in 2009 for Goolwa, and it spoke to this site, and it spoke about catchment for schools and recreation. There was an open space and rec strategy done just for Goolwa in 2011, and it referenced this site. There was a Goolwa North Inquiry by Design workshop in 2016 that helped inform this site. And the TSA Productive Economy Land Demand and Supply Analysis report's been spoken about by everyone tonight. This highlights the importance of a coordinated and holistic approach to future growth to ensure that land use, transport, open space, environmental considerations and community facilities are integrated. Master planning is fundamental, and you get that with sites like this. You don't get that with infill. I appreciate that I didn't have an issue with the emerging township activities subzone, because I think that the contemporary modern world and expectations of communities suggest that that will be managed appropriately, and demand would drive that. I note the references in the report that Council will commence work on its housing strategy in 2026. That will address critical infrastructure requirements and support future communities and identify a suitable location for a convenience activity centre. There is an opportunity cost to other areas of our council when all this focus is on Goolwa. And I hope we progress that quickly. in this financial year, because we've got budget for it. I do think supporting the code amendment is appropriate. I'm not sure not having that spatial application out of it is appropriate, but I can live with that not being in there, and I support Council's submission and the letter that was as printed in the agenda, which removes that, recommends removing that. If you just think about the practicality of this, I support the Chitterslow principle. I love it that Goolwa is a Chitterslow town. But if you have this development and drive all that traffic through to the existing centre, that's not consistent with a Chitterslow principle. I do agree with seeking the application of the gateway overlay, absolutely, and to reinforce and protect this important entrance to Goolwa. I'm here to make decisions for current and future generations in a balanced and proportionate way. Plans from 2009, 2011, 2016, 2023 speak to this Goolwa North location. The community has said what they will accept and what they won't. But if you want upgraded facilities, you will need well-managed and planned development. And I said infill won't give you that. People are coming here whether we like it or not. And sometimes it feels like we are bordering on, this is probably too strong a word, but obfuscation when it comes to making these types of decisions. To say preliminary investigations that have informed the development of the draft recreation open sports strategy have revealed that additional soccer fields and indoor basketball courts, as well as additional youth and recreational facilities, are required, there's huge unmet demand in our region for this, and master-planned communities support that. I guess in closing, I just want to say that should the rezoning proceed, there will be ongoing infrastructure maintenance costs and costs to council.
That's 5 minutes, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm about to wrap it up. Thank you,
You're
Worship.
over 5 minutes now, so
Yeah.
you're over time.
There will be financial and economic benefits as a result of additional residential development within the council region. So I will be voting this down, and I hope that it is voted down and we go back to what Councillor Maidment originally moved, because I think all of this is too much and I don't understand the implications of it. So I think it's too much of a leap from what was presented to us. Thank you, Worship.
5 minutes is the time. You know the time is 5 minutes. It's been that way for as long as I can remember. So 5 minutes is 5 minutes. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Worship. I live in Goolwa. I love Goolwa just the way it is. I think it is a beautiful town, and I read this report very closely. I strongly support the gateway overlay to protect the entrance to our town, demonstrating a plan for pedestrian and bikeway linkages. I strongly support preserving Cadell Street and Goolwa Shopping Centre as our primary retail centres. I think it's really important in my consideration of how Goolwa will grow, not only to preserve the character of our town, but also to consider deeply the needs of other people in our community. And I want to share a story or a conversation that I had with a young man at Goolwa Oval. He was volunteering at the gate. He was a young footy player, and he works locally on Cadell Street. And he was 21, and he told me, I said, "Oh, you know, do you live locally? Do you live here in Goolwa?" And he said, "Well, I'm living with my mum, and I can't find a rental." And I said, "Oh, do you think that you'll be looking to buy something soon?" And he said, "I don't think my girlfriend and I will ever buy a home. That's just off our list of aspirations, because it just seems so impossible." And we talk in this chamber about housing affordability, and we talk about the people in our community who need diverse housing options so that home ownership is an opportunity for them as well. So I actually support Councillor Miller's comments in terms of going back to the initial motion with Councillor Maidment's addition of point 3, because I think that with an appropriate concept plan and absolutely appropriate placement of any smaller blocks out of prominence from visitors or locals who are coming into our town, so that we're able to retain our character, but that we're also able to support other people in our community getting into secure housing. And that's just so important. We know that when we have these discussions, we talk about the responsibility at every level of government to take action to make houses a reality and homes a reality for not only young people but older people. We do need smaller housing. Not everybody can afford even a 2 or 3 bedroom home, let alone 3, 4. So I actually think that we have to think long term, and we have to think about everybody in our community. So certainly with everything that we can possibly do to maintain the character of our town, I'll be voting against this because I'd like to see us go back to the initial motion proposed by Councillor Maidman.
Councillor Livingston.
Thank you, Mayor Parks. Firstly, I want to thank the designated entity, Oakfords, for allowing and accepting feedback from Council after the cut-off date. I think it's fair to say that developers like the designated entity are only doing their job and trying to make the most of the opportunities which are being pushed by the state government. I can appreciate that balancing community expectations and state government plans is a very difficult job, so I just want to acknowledge that. There is a housing crisis, and affordable housing is an issue that we face. It would be naive if we didn't all consider proposed development and the demand for housing on the South Coast. A lot of this is out of our control. However, it is critical that this council advocate to its best ability on behalf of our community to ensure that any development now and in the future is complementary to the South Coast Growth Strategy and any future housing strategy and local area plans that this council adopts. And like Councillor Maidman said, a holistic approach to commercial development is very important. I find it difficult to continuously be in a position to consider proposed development and code amendments which will significantly increase the population in circumstances where we lack infrastructure, services and water for the current population. I can appreciate that Oakford see opportunities and are acting accordingly. However, without adequate planning, there will be failure. I emphasise the importance of a sufficient landscape buffer to be mandatory, not just an option. Goolwa is a Chitterlow town. It is critical that any development considers the township's heritage and character and is constructed in a complementary manner. I note Councillor Cooman's comment regarding whether the dwellings face inward or outward, and the size of the most appropriate buffer would depend on that planning. The gateway overlay is critical. However, I think it is unlikely that the variation for a 100-metre wide landscape buffer is likely to get up. The pushback from the community is strong, and I encourage any current and future developers to seriously consider not just the opportunity, but what is important to the people that reside here and love visiting. At this point in time, I cannot support the retail centre as proposed, especially with the proposed redevelopment or refurbishment of the current retail centre. I cannot say that in the future that one would not be required. However, any proposal ought to be appropriate and factor in the expansions currently on foot. It is on that basis that I support the response as prepared by administration. I will accept the variations and vote in favour of this motion. However, I do note that with that, unlikely that what we want is going to be achieved. We can only advocate. We're not in control of this process. But it is important that we put our opinion forward and do represent our community to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Any further discussion? No, I'll just say what I want to say. Before you don't, I think a few things. First, we've been through something like this in Strathalbyn and many other towns as far as huge retail facilities being moved out of the town centre. You don't need me to tell you. Just go for a drive to the Riverland, go to Loxton, Wakery, drive down the main street, look at the empty shops and find the big supermarkets outside town. That's what it does. It kills the centre of the town. Now, what we're talking about here with this development proposal fits within the South Coast Growth Strategy. It fits within the sequence of release that we've discussed and proposed that we've got to bring back to council to finalise. We've discussed that. this with the Planning Commission, and they were very complimentary of the way this council has gone about looking at this growth and our strategy for growth and staged, slow release of land in a sequence, but allowing for a certain amount of that land to be used before any more is, so we don't get this all over the place. As far as the shopping, going back donkey's years, we talked about the original Goolwa North growth area, which is already much bigger than what it probably even needs to be now. But at that stage, we thought there was going to be an opportunity which would be very handy for people living further down Fenchurch Street, back towards the creek, for a small convenience type store facility for just for the local people, a convenient facility. And we had the little deli on Liverpool Road at one stage. But part of what the development of the Goolwa North and the land around involves is significant road infrastructure upgrades as well as sewer, water and everything else. So that you will no longer have the need for everybody that wants to go to the shop to come down Liverpool Road and come to the corner of Cadell Street and wait for an hour in the traffic. They'll be able to go around the back through near the school and come across through the back, down through, up through to Oliver Street and go through there. So there's no, that will take place and it will work and that people will be fine. As far as traffic flow, it's just making sure that we've said all the way along, the government want us to grow at a rate which is out of control. Our position, I think Matt in discussion was, we're talking, looking at some of the stuff, over 60 years worth of land without even going to future stages available. So on the current growth rate, on the predicted growth rate, maybe 30 years of the first sequence of land. So there's plenty of time for growth. There's still a lot of land in Goolwa and around that can be developed and used for housing. And again, we know that SA Water, I'm not saying that it applies to this site. This site will probably be okay, but certainly SA Water for future growth in Goolwa North and down towards the east in that way is going to be reliant on significant water main upgrades. And we know that SA Water can't even look at starting to design that till 2029. And we don't know where they're going to build another reservoir, because you can't just keep taking water out of a reservoir and it's not never ending. So personally, I don't have a problem with the proposal. I do think what you've said, the absolute essential thing is that we protect the ambience as you drive into this town. It's a beautiful town, it's a nice entry to the town. We don't want to spoil it. Done properly, this will actually improve it, because we won't look at the back end of the caravan park. So it will tidy that up. It'll be some nice houses with gardens, some trees. So there's a lot of potential for it to do good. But I think what we've discussed with the Planning Commission was that where we were working with the South Coast Growth Strategy, but also the town plan for not just Goolwa, the Goolwa town plan, the Middleton town plan, all these town plans together, so that we can identify where a small retail facility might be and where growth may be and where could be high density which wouldn't affect the aesthetics of the area and the character of the area. So I must say they were very complimentary. In fact, they advised that we're probably the only council doing any serious work on this at the moment, but I know they're starting to push other councils to start doing it. So we are well advanced, and the team have done an excellent job of putting what they've done together so far, so we should be very pleased. But yep, so Councillor Maidment, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, like I said before, there's no problem with residential out that side of town in that particular space. I do understand the TVNs and the two-storey height limit. The 100-metre landscaping is will be massaged by the developers at some stage going forward. They will be back to see the minister to reduce that 100 metres, no doubt. That's their prerogative. I have no problems with them doing that. You're dreaming if you think you're going to get a house out there under $500,000. So the 21-year-olds of today will probably be living with mum and dad for quite some time. I know it's difficult, and we were told, or the proponents acknowledged, that 10% will be holiday homes. So there's another business for the Airbnbs of Goolwa that we currently have an oversupply of at the moment. So with the smaller blocks, I heard, less than 350 square metres. That means you're going to have that entrance similar to what is at Mount Barker coming in off of Wellington Road. They're all jammed in together. That's not a good look. So if you can get them back off the road away, 100 metres away, well then it won't be such an impact. So the holistic approach, and I agree totally with Councillor Scott, on the eastern side of Alexandrina Road is where the bulk of the people of Goolwa will be living. There's quite a lot of people out there at the moment, so they have the furthest distance to travel to an activity centre or a shopping centre. So in time, and like I said, I've got lived experience at my own hometown, and it's not a real good look coming into town with a big petrol station, a soon-to-be shopping centre, and a shopping precinct right on the edge of town. And that's something that the townspeople fought against back in 2014, and they were successful for a time, but the developers pushed, like I said, they'll push the boundaries, and then they'll jump to the minister, and it'll be a major development, and council won't have any say whatsoever. So I hope you support this.
That ends the discussion, so I will put the motion to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. So 9.2 is the naming of a native grassland site at Ratalang Batham's Beach Conservation Reserve. Alan, is there anything to add to this report? Updates? No? So we've got a recommendation group A and a recommendation group. So we do A first. Councillor Maidment, you moving A?
Can we do A and B?
We can, yeah.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yep.
Point of order, Your Worship.
Beg your pardon?
Are you going to put them all together?
Yes.
Because that's how we deal with consultation feedback.
Councillor Maidment asked me, will I take them all together? And I said, yes, I'll take them all together. Yeah. Lachlan, is that a problem? So Councillor Maidment would like, yeah, he would like to, we do, yeah. So if you'd like to move them all, yes, you move it, or we can do them separately.
Well, if the general feeling is moving separately, I'm quite happy to go with that.
So you've moved group A?
Yep. No, it's just receiving the report and note that the community engagement, so not much to talk about really.
So do we have a second, Councillor Oliver? Speak? No. Any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to move an amendment to this, please. I would like to add a point 3, and that is, so 1 and 2 is there. Release to the public on the council meetings page of the website all submissions received with any names and contact details of respondents redacted. I'm interested to know why the consultation included 3 options instead of 2. I think it introduced an element of bias into the feedback. Whilst the committee did not see any need to ask the community their thoughts on this naming, I'm delighted the community had the opportunity to comment. I'm also pleased that Council's naming of roads, reserves and public places policy was given due consideration. 100 formal responses suggest there is interest in this. Of the 100 responses, 51 were in support of including a reference to Pleasant Banks. 40 were in support of a name that directly references native grasslands. Of the 3 names formally proposed, each received the following votes: Native Grassland 22, Native Grassland Reserve 15, Pleasant Banks Native Grassland Reserve 22. Administration's view in recommending this appears to be based on only the 3 names proposed, but that ignores 51 of the 100 submissions supported a reference to Pleasant Banks. In accordance with Alexandrina Council's risk matrix, the report says, the risk of adopting this recommendation is considered low as it follows the recommendation of the committee and aligns with the outcomes of the community consultations and addresses concerns regarding the Basham name and confusion in naming a zone within the reserve. I don't think it does align with outcomes from the community consultation. There's no confusion. This wasn't about the Basham name, it was about the Pleasant Banks sign that already exists in situ and from a reference point is easy to say. I'll meet you at the Pleasant Banks end. I believe the report ignores the feedback from the community. There was a suggestion to name this Pleasant Banks Yada Nindi Grassland. That means Pleasant Banks Land Renewing. I thought that was an absolutely beautiful name. It resonated with me. This area has historically been known as Pleasant Banks. The committee wants us to respect Indigenous history, and I do too, but they don't want us to respect European settlement. You only have to look at the Masterplan consultation item later in the agenda and see that any access that links European usage is being slowly dismantled and eroded. And I'm mindful of the time, so I'll just cut to the chase. There's a very strong attachment to the name Pleasant Banks within the community. The terms of reference for the committee states 3.1.2, identify and recommend solutions to continue to make Ratalang, Basham Beats Conservation Reserve and Horseshoe Bay Reserve a pleasant place where people can quietly reflect, honour and remember their ancestors, both Indigenous and settlers. The 2018 Masterplan on page 13 states, the European settlement and farming heritage of the area will continue to be recognised via retention of an open farming landscape at the Middleton end of the reserve adjacent Pleasant Banks homestead. To quote one of the respondents to the feedback, I am concerned a potential bias to the consultation process which could distort the outcome. 2 very similar choices using the Ratalang name are pitched against the single colonial Pleasant Banks option. But fortunately, the sum of the 2 Ratalang options together were not greater than the Pleasant Banks reference. This process of consultation was not a level playing field to validly determine a choice between Indigenous heritage and the colonial heritage. I think I agree with one of those respondents. So that's why I'm asking for this amendment to release to the public all of the feedback received so the public can see for themselves. I'm not asking for anybody's details to be released, but I am asking that the submissions so that the community can see what was received and form their own view of this feedback. If we're going to ignore, 100 people, I did not expect 10 to respond. 100 people, and 51 of them said, retain some reference to Pleasant Banks. And I question really, do we need to name it at all? Thank you.
So just to be clear, you're just moving the amendment, you're not including 1 and 2 in that?
Your Worship, I'm including 1, 2 and 3.
1, 2 and 3.
I'm just adding.
Right. That's all I need to know. Thank you. So, So we're talking about 3 at the moment. So is there a seconder for that part 3 as a part of the amendment? No seconder, so that will lapse through onto the seconder. So we go back to the original recommendation, A 1 and 2, moved by Councillor Maidment, seconded by Councillor Oliver, is there any discussion on that? Not. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. We go to recommendation group B, 1 dot point. Move, Councillor Miller, you moving that?
I'm moving that Council approve not Ratalang native grassland, but I want to replace Ratalang native grassland with Pleasant Banks, and in fact I'll go for what I picked up from the consultation, Pleasant Banks Yata Nindi grassland. And I'll speak to why I'm moving that. It's YARTANINDI. No, and it's 2 words.
Through the Mayor, just having some concerns expressed because it's suggesting an Indigenous name and we haven't consulted with NAC as...
They do.
Yeah, I'm just sharing that I would have concerns with using an Indigenous name without getting the appropriate permissions first. Just flagging that as a risk with you.
I'll add the word subject to any feedback from the relevant authority, the relevant Indigenous authority. And it's got grassland after Yata Nindi, Pleasant Banks Yata Nindi grassland. And I'm happy to speak to my reasons. Sorry, I was waiting for the typing to be finished, Your Worship. So I'm asking for this. I had initially thought about approved Pleasant Banks native grassland, taking out any reference to a reserve because that was some of the concerns that the report author suggested or a reason not to name it. I guess I can't add too much more to what I said before. I think and I'm disappointed the public won't get to see all of the feedback and the reasoning behind it, and I do appreciate the summary that the officers gave. I appreciate and thank very much 100 people taking the time to respond. I found it interesting that for the first time we had a little, whatever it was on the website that you could see voting happening. I thought that was an interesting initiative. But I'm putting this forward because we have European settlement on this reserve, and the Masterplan speaks to honouring that. It also, I think this is a really lovely compromise. It surrounds Pleasant Banks, has been a part of the Ratalang history for many, many years and generations. This doesn't talk about the Bashams. It talks about the Pleasant Banks homestead, which has been on that site for a very, very long time. It picks up an Indigenous reference, Yata Nindi, which, if it's accurate in the feedback, talks about land renewing and land becoming, and I think that's beautiful. And so I put this, and if it fails, it fails, but I think we need to recognise both elements of this history, which is consistent with the terms of reference and consistent with the master plan. Thank you.
So do we have a seconder for that? No, so that will lapse for a seconder, and we'll go back to the original recommendation, .1 on Group B. Move, Councillor Maidment. Seconded, Councillor Coomans. Is any discussion on that? Councillor Maidment, oh, you'd better talk. Yeah.
Well, Pleasant Banks Homestead is privately owned. It's not part of Ratalang Conservation Reserve in any case. So I think any reference to Pleasant Banks in the naming of the reserve is probably not required. So it gets me back to the Ratalang native grassland, and I did notice that the ANC were asked for comment and to put in a submission. That was not forthcoming, so I believe this is the best option, and it covers most of the people that did respond. 22 for Ratalang native grassland, 15 for the grassland reserve. Well, you wouldn't have a reserve within a reserve, so that cuts that one out, and I don't believe it should be Pleasant Banks in any case.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be voting in the affirmative for this motion, at least for this recommendation B. I think we've actually inadvertently continued the unfortunate divide in the community between Ratalang Committee and also Pleasant Banks. I think naming the reserve, the Ratalang native grasslands, will continue the aggravation that is already in the community, which is really sad. And therefore I foreshadow a new motion, should the motion recommendation Group B fail, that at this point in time the reserve simply be known as Ratalang Basham Beach Conservation Reserve.
Just got Councillor Coomans. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. When I seconded that, you went back to the mover to say some words, and I didn't get an opportunity. But I think Councillor Maidman has said it all, and I think the Ratalang Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee are a pretty good committee. The membership of that committee, I think, are top shelf, and I think they've done a fantastic job in all the things that they do, and their recommendation is as per the recommendation or the motion on the screen, and I'm quite happy to support what they say.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't see this as a divisive issue, and now I'm becoming quite concerned having listened to the sides. I saw it much more simplistically like that. I just saw it as a common sense naming of a place what it is. It's a native grassland. So that's where I'm coming at from in supporting it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
I just have a question. Do we have to, I'm actually delighted that Councillor Gardner has suggested what she's suggested, but is there any other area in the conservation reserve that is named? I'm just curious why we even need to name it at all.
Through the Mayor. So under the Masterplan, the reserve itself, it's just one reserve, that's the conservation reserve, is actually split into 8 zones, and each one of those is named. There is some interpretive signing scattered across the park in relation to some of those zones, but it's not something that has been consistently rolled out across the park. However, in this case, because of the work that had been undertaken to get the grasslands to where they are, and also to, I suppose, both advertise the fact that it had been done and also to inform the visitors and community of what had been done, the committee wanted to recognise it as such a space, and something that, as an organisation or a council, we do biodiversity and revegetation work, but this is on a scale that is very different from what we would normally do. So those are the points that came forward through the committee, and hence the reason why they wish to acknowledge that, name it, and then sign it accordingly.
Any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. With the benefit of that explanation, I'm still surprised why if it was about promoting the site to the community and raising awareness of it and the work that's been done there, that you wouldn't want to have consulted the community in the first place. In the next item, removing signage and not promoting signage seems to be one of the key themes, so this is where I get confused about Ratalang, so I won't be supporting this, and I'll be supporting that it doesn't get named at all. I find it, there's no rhyme or reason to how things are named in that reserve.
Any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support this motion. I want to thank everybody who submitted and got involved in the public consultation, and I really value all of the feedback. I read this really closely, and I felt that the response to the feedback in the report that we were presented was very informative and helpful in guiding me to come to the chamber tonight, hopeful that we might get to Ratalang native grassland. And I just want to share that I had a local member of our community get in touch with me today to talk about this item. And this is Sarah, who is the director of Port Elliot Kindergarten, and she asked me to share that children from the kindergarten have been visiting, propagating and planting native plants at Ratalang for 7 years. And when they reflect on what they're doing, they say, we are making it how it used to be. And I think it's so valuable I believe it's valuable to name the native grassland, because it is a really beautiful project for our community and something that we can celebrate. It is planting native grassland, and it's good for our environment, it's good for our community, and it's something that the children at Port Elliot Kindergarten year upon year are really proud of being involved in the Conservation Reserve. So I think that it is wonderful to have Ratalang native grassland as a very simple name to acknowledge sort of a returning to a native grassland and an Indigenous name. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Livingston.
Thank you, Mayor Parks. I'm in support of this motion. I can appreciate where fellow councillors are coming from in terms of a divide, and it is really unfortunate that there is a divide on this. But similar to Councillor Nicholson, for me, the naming of this area is meant to pay tribute to the intent of this project, and I think that this name perfectly reflects that. And I also want to point out that in the master plan and the different areas within the conservation reserve does speak about Pleasant Banks, does speak about Basham's Beach and the Bashams and the European heritage, but this project is about pre-heritage and returning the land to the native grassland. Thank you.
Any further discussion? So, Councillor Maidment, do you wish to write a reply? No. So I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. (9.3) is Community Engagement Report regarding Ocean Road, Middleton. It's a proposed road closure. Alan, is there anything to add to that report? Any updates to that? We've got the recommendation Group A and Group B, so do them individually at this stage. So Group A, is there a mover for that? Move, Councillor Livingston. Wish to speak to it? Is there a seconder? Councillor Oliver. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll put that to you. All those in favour? Against? Start again. Right. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. We go to Group B with 2 dot points. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Maidment. Councillor Scott, you seconding it? I can't see your hand. If you
Yes,
stick it
happy
up.
to. Thank you.
You have to put your hand out so they can see it. Is there any discussion? Yes? Go ahead.
I'd just like to mention I'm very familiar with that road, and while the report does mention about stock being driven along there, yes, it was a more direct pathway to into Middleton. If you were going to the Port Elliot Market and driving sheep, you would go down Glenford Gully Road. Well, the market's gone and most of the sheep have gone, and people cart their stock by transport now, and therefore that road is really redundant. And the other important thing is, for anyone using it heading north, that corner where it joins Glenford Gully Road is actually quite a dangerous corner, because it is coming right up behind you on the left side, the traffic, and they bowl up that road pretty quickly. So I see no problem in closing it, and if there is an emergency service vehicle wanting to get from Lovell Road up into Glenford Gully Road, goodness me, it's about 200 metres down there, and then you're on gravel road, and it's no problem at all. So I'm very happy recommending to the chamber that they support it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Coomans.
Yeah, just a quick point. Interestingly, when you look at Google Maps, it shows Glenford Gully Road deviating right into Lovell Road, and then turns left into the proposed closure, which is also named Glenford Gully Road. So there was a bit of an anomaly there. And certainly, yes, install boulders to restrict vehicle access. So I support this.
Any further discussion? Not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 9.4 is Goolwa Beach four-wheel drive access. Alan, is there any updates to this? So we've got a recommendation there with 2 dot points. Move Councillor Oliver. Do you wish to speak to it? Seconder, Councillor Livingston. Is there any discussion? No, I put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Lachlan's suggesting we might like to have a 5-minute break. Make it 5 minutes. So Joe, everybody in favour? Yep, thanks. That's it. 5 minutes. 9.5 is the Riverboat Centre project completion. Alan, are there anything to add to this report? No. So there's a recommendation there with 2 dot points. Move Councillor Coomans.
Thank you, Mayor Parkes. Look, I'm very happy to move this. This main issue, the thing of the riverboat, first came to my notice in my first term of office when the Friends of the Oscar W Committee invited EMs to a committee meeting in relation to their future tenure and operations. The then Councillor Michael Fleurieu and I attended that meeting, and we were very impressed with the professional way in which they conducted the matter and their professional expertise in all matters relating to riverboats, especially those driven by steam. We agreed to work with them to achieve the best possible outcome for the community at large. Now, the report says most of what there is to say, but it's also worth saying that Council's initial thoughts were to move the Friends in the boat out of the way to the very end of the jetty. One issue not considered was the water depth and the difficulty in mooring the boat. Then commercial interests were considered much more important than just a boat and some volunteers. So move them out of the northern end and put them along the southern end of the shed and give them less space. It went from 5 down to 4 rather than at 50-50 or more space. Council chose a consultant that had a completely different vision for the display centre and charged higher fees rather than someone who was very much in tune with the Friends of the Oscar W vision. Things like place the entrances at inappropriate locations so the weather would become an enemy. give them some funds for the centre, but with a condition that no more. So that's a little bit of the history, but the results are in. An initial council allocation of $250,000, of which 183 was granted to the Oscar W people for the Riverboat Centre. The Friends committed an additional $67,000 in cash from funds raised over 35 years plus some grants for the chairs and materials from volunteering and from the Bendigo Bank. Over 60% of the cash budget spent on local trades. Keys Home Hardware supplied material for the refit early, on good faith only, because there was some risk. All the approvals weren't in place yet. They had a business plan approved by council where the key objective is to achieve break even. So what's happened is their cruises this year, they've had 100 up to about now, 12 charters in the past 3 months, 2 friends and sponsor cruises, $80,000 in ticket sales. This year, Santa will arrive at the wharf as part of the flotilla. They will also be part of the fireworks for the first time. So the value of volunteers. Their volunteers, their labour amounts to about $1 million a year. Their vision is to bring the Goolwa Riverport history to life, and I would like to commend the Friends for their hard work and dedication to the committee, captains and crew, the Wednesday workers and the Friends. Their patron, Rowley Bartlett, committee, Christina, Jan, Mark, Martin, Peter, Alan, and of course their action man, Nigel Robinson. David Fazzolari, the project manager, who has done an amazing job. They would like to thank you, Mayor Parkes, for backing the Friends all the way, and to Councillor Oliver for his support, and those other EMs who also back the Friends rather than the corporate sector. They want to make special mention of the former and current CEOs and GM Stacey Bateson and Alan Harvey for listening, getting things done, and for personal commitments to make this a success. As for me, I think I've come to the point where the focus is changing to one of financial sustainability, and I think Councillor Oliver is in a good position to be able to take them forward. So I give notice that I would like to terminate my position as Council Liaison Officer as at the end of December and nominate Councillor Oliver to take my place as of the 1st of January 2026. If possible, I would like to add that as number 3, if that's appropriate. And the variation I'm asking is that accept a verbal request from Councillor Kermans to his termination as Council Liaison Officer in favour of Councillor Peter Oliver as of 1 January 2026, if that's appropriate. Shall I just read the words again? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I should have sent this to you. Accept a verbal request from Councillor Kermans to his termination as Council Liaison Officer in favour of Councillor Peter Oliver as of 1 January 2026. And is that okay? Okay. So finally, Goolwa and the Fleurieu is a heritage tourism hotspot, and the steam salute between the heritage steam trains and paddle steamers are unique in Australia. And the Friends of the Oscar W and their council-owned boat are the champions of a unique international standard tourist attraction. And all I say is full steam ahead. Thank you.
So do we have a seconder? Councillor Nicholson? Any discussion? Councillor Scott?
I think Councillor Kermans has said a lot of it, but I just want to add my perspective on the whole thing and congratulate the Friends of the Oscar W for their persistence, perseverance, and for winning out in the end and providing South Australia in general and Goolwa in particular, with a magnificent combination of a paddle steamer and the Riverboat Centre. I happened to be driving down there the other day and the Oscar W went past, and I just thought we're just extraordinarily fortunate to have something of that scale that is run by volunteers and is here for the people of Goolwa and visitors. I think it's just absolutely fantastic, and it is to me the jewel in the crown of Alexandrina and of Goolwa in particular. However, I think that we would be very remiss if we didn't reflect back on the pathway that we took from day one to tonight and didn't examine what we did and where we went wrong, and so we don't ever create that sort of a situation again, because it has been a pathway that has been interrupted with some unfortunate passages along the way, and I just wish that we could have got through without that sort of thing happening. I think most of the current staff have been in getting it back on track, not being in the planning stage, but I think we need to just look at where we went wrong, so that if we have big projects again, we streamline it and don't fall into that category. But absolutely fantastic, and I also commend the staff for their involvement and for helping to get it back on track and making it all happen too. So 10 out of 10. And also I acknowledge my council colleague, Councillor Coomans, for his involvement backwards and forwards from Mount Compass, and probably would have had some fairly challenging meetings along the way. So congratulations there too. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I just would like to clarify your intent of point 3, because at the moment it's saying accept the verbal request from Councillor Coomans for his termination as Council Liaison Officer to Friends of Oscar W Incorporated in favour of Peter Oliver. So are you wanting us to appoint Peter as the liaison to the external committee of Friends of Oscar W?
Yes, the council actually appointed me as the liaison officer some time ago.
To the external committee.
And what I'm asking is that Councillor Oliver now take my place as the liaison officer.
Could I just take a moment to perhaps clarify that wording? I just think it's a little bit unclear. So are we sort of accepting your verbal resignation?
I hope so.
Yeah, okay. And appoint, all right. Through the Mayor, if I may, are you comfortable with that, Councillor Coomans? Just tidy the wording up so we're really clear about what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, I guess what I could add is that the Friends of Oscar W are aware and are in support of this.
Thank you.
So is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
I'm completely supportive of what everyone has said tonight. My question isn't about that. My question is about what does the Council Liaison Officer do? And is this the process we follow to appoint council representatives to external bodies? Because I understand that's what this is now. So I'm just seeking some, I guess it's just a precedent or procedural matter that I'm wondering, do we have to deal with it tonight? Could we not deal with it in January? Is there an urgency about this? I have no issue with it. It's a purely procedural question, I guess. It's an external body.
Yep. Through the Mayor, no, this is not normally a process we would do. Normally we would accept a resignation and administration might bring forward an appointment. It's not a council controlled committee because they're now an external committee. I'm not sure if their terms of reference speak to what this position does. I'd have to take on notice the question of what that role does, because unless Councillor Coomans can answer that for me, if there's any documentation about what the position entails.
I think it might be safer if we remove it, and I'll write formally and we consider it in January, but you can't backdate it the 1st of January, so it'll have to go from then. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. That's all right.
Can we just bring it back to January? Let's bring it back to a January meeting.
We can do with you outside the meeting.
So Councillor Livingston, you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Parks. I 100% support Councillor Oliver being appointed, and I just do echo Councillor Miller's comments about process, and we need to follow our processes, and I think that's pretty black and white. I also want to thank Councillor Coomans for all his efforts as well in the time he has been the liaison officer. In terms of my notes, what I wrote down, I think just everything was positive about what the Friends have achieved with what funding they had, the process, etc. And now what the Riverboat Centre now looks like is incredible. The tourism attraction, even the press that they're getting is amazing. And I think it's very notable to say that they should be very proud of what they have achieved. I do, and this might come a bit as a contentious comment, I look forward to the day that we can speak about the Oscar W and have no buts or negative comments and this went wrong and this went wrong. And I think it's really important that we reflect on what the process was and what did go wrong. But for me, this report is about what the Friends of the Oscar W have achieved, and a lot of that has been with the support of this chamber. We can't control what we inherit when we take office. I think we've all worked very hard, and I think we all have the same goal, and that's for the Friends of the Oscar W to succeed. It's for the PS Oscar W to remain on the water, for us to not go with some other councils and have boats as beautiful as this and as important as this as stagnant displays. But having all of that, having the heritage and supporting volunteers like this remains paramount. And I really do want to emphasise how important it is, what a great achievement they have done, and 100% congratulate and commend them on that. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. And very quickly, I agree with everything. Congratulations, Friends of Oscar W. Absolutely magnificent. And elected members, I think we've done a pretty good job with this. We really have. And to the administration, good job to you, and also the broader community. And the amount of support behind the Oscar W is just absolutely incredible. Councillor Coomans, thank you for all that you've done. You've been the bridging interface with everything, and you've been wonderful. I've got to say, the only thing to me more overwhelming than the success of this project and the Oscar W is the passion and the enthusiasm that I see in all the volunteers. I was on it again just last week on the boat, and I just couldn't believe it. The passion's just pouring off of them all, and the excitement, and no negativity. It's all just positive for the future. And I might just take the opportunity to foreshadow. I can see a great opportunity in the future to go even further, and I see a great opportunity to restore that dart barge, and I see many, many great things to do. I think that's going to be absolutely magnificent. I look forward to the continuing adventure, and thank you all.
Any further discussion? Councillor Coomans, you wish to write a reply?
Just a couple of quick words in response. I thought long and hard about whether I'd say anything about the negative aspects of it, but I think this is probably the last time we ever need to mention anything about that, because it's such a positive outcome where we are now. And, you know, we've been through some dark times, some challenges. They've been met, and in the end, I think it's all been full cooperation, which is fantastic. I do quite often mention to them about this thing down the other end of the wharf called the Dart, or what's left of it. And there are thoughts out there about what to do with it, and there's others saying it's gone, it's, you know, it never happened. But if you listen to the patron, it can happen. So I just hope it will. Thanks.
Any further discussion? I think that closes the discussion, so I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. So 9.6 is the Goolwa Skate Park renaming and sponsorship. Alan, is there any updates on that report? No. So we've got a recommendation there with 5 dot points. Moved, Councillor Gardner. Yep.
This is such a great initiative. If I were younger, I would be on the skate park, and I certainly would be on the bike bit. But I do think that having a sponsorship each year is such a good idea. So yes, I hope you will all endorse this.
Any further discussion? Or is there a seconder? Councillor Miller, you're seconding it?
Yes. May I speak? I agree. I think this is a really innovative way to go about looking after council assets. I was going to suggest, or I ask Your Worship, if after we've dealt with this, if I could just move a motion without notice, that is, that council request administration to prepare a draft sponsorship or donations policy for consideration by council within a time frame that allows for adoption of it no later than the 31st of January.
Time. I won't accept the nomination. I won't accept the motion without notice.
If I may, can I finish speaking, Your Worship?
We're wasting our time on something that we're not going to accept this evening. If you wish to move a motion, you can put it in a writing and go to January. You can speak to this motion, yes.
I think I accept that you won't accept my motion with no notice, and I'm happy to put it on notice. If you had let me finish, I would have said, or I can put it on motion, note it, whatever, for the January council meeting. I think in fairness to this sponsor, that we, and the report even discusses this, that administration will prepare a sponsorship agreement. It was just picking that up. It's in the report. It's not technically a motion without notice because it's addressed in the report. I was just picking up a comment. If we're going to go down this path, which I think is more than appropriate, we should have some policy around it and make sure that it's fair and equitable to other people who may want to do this or other businesses. It's a public asset. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.7 is the Fleurieu Aquatic Centre Joint Venture Quarterly Report for September through to December 25. And there's a recommendation that we receive and note that. Move Councillor Nicholson. Seconder, Councillor Gardner. Is there any discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 9.8 is the Code of Practice for Access to Council, Committee and Information or Briefing Session Meetings and Documents. Nikki, there's anything to add to that report? No. So there's a recommendation there with 3 dot points. Move Councillor Livingston. Second, Councillor Kermans. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Miller, are you for or against? So we'll start again. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.9. This one, the Hills Area Health Advisory Council, nomination of a local member. Councillor Miller's got a conflict.
I wish to declare a conflict of interest, Your Worship, due to my employment, and I think it's best that I leave the room. Thank you.
Can I just say a little bit about this?
Thank you, through Your Worship. Members, there is quite a few options there for you. Recommendation Group A is just about receiving and noting the report. Recommendation Group B is really a decision for you whether you want to make any nomination at all. What's in the recommendations there is to make a nomination, but Tanya has words that she can put up as the alternative to not make a recommendation if you choose not to. Recommendation Group C would be if you wanted to select perhaps the names that Mount Barker Council had put up. Recommendation, if you don't want to do that, recommendation Group C2 would be for you to determine your own candidates via a voting process if there was more than 2 people who wanted to do that. And if you did do that, recommendation Group D would adjourn the meeting to go through that whole voting process. And then when you finally finish doing all of that, should you choose to do all that, recommendation Group E is to plug the names of whoever it is you're nominating in for resolution and putting forward to the Hills Area Health Advisory Council. So it's a little bit convoluted, but we're in your hands as to which way you want to go, and we will sort of build as we go through.
We'll start with recommendation Group A. Is there a mover for that? Move Councillor Livingston. Second, Councillor Maidment. Is there any discussion relating to that? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to say that I was a member of the Health Advisory Council, the Southern Fleurieu Health Advisory Council, for 2 years, and this was based at the South Coast District Hospital, and it is just such a valuable council to bring the views and the needs of the community to the Barossa Hills Fleurieu Local Health Network team, and it reports directly to the Minister, and it's just a really valuable role, I believe, for an elected council member. So I was really thrilled to see this come tonight.
Is there any further discussion? Not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. And we go to recommendation Group B. So this is where we resolve whether we're going to make or not make a recommendation. Councillor Coomans.
Just a question. If there's anyone interested in being one or two of those members, should we determine that and then we know which way we should go?
So that's a good idea. So is there anybody interested in putting the hand up for that? Save us a lot of work if we don't do it. No. So what do we do now, Lachlan? We resolve not to make. So we would now go to the recommendation on the screen where we resolve not to make a recommendation. Move Councillor Coomans. Seconder, Councillor Livingston. Any discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So that's the end of that one, is it? So that's the end of that. So I get Councillor Miller back. We'll go back to the next item is 9.10, which is a policy review, an internal review of council's decision procedure. Nikki, that's one of yours. Anything to change on that report? So there's a recommendation there with 2 dot points. Is there a mover for that? Move, Councillor Gardner. Seconder, Councillor Nicholson. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 9.11 is an annual review of confidential orders. Tash, is there anything to add to that report? No. There's a recommendation there with 3 points. Move, Councillor Livingston. Seconder, Councillor Oliver. Is there any discussion relating to that? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. .12 is the Chief Executive Officer's report. Tash, is there anything to add to that? No. So you've got a recommendation that report for November be received. So that's a joint report from Andrew and Tash. Is there a mover for that? Move, Councillor Maidment. Seconded, Councillor Livingston. Are there any questions or comments relating that report? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 9.13 is the Delegate Council Resolution Register. Tash, anything to, no, all good. And there's a recommendation there that we receive and note that. Move, Councillor Livingston. Seconder, Councillor Nicholson. Any questions or discussion relating to that? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So item 10 is committee reports. 10.1 is a report from the Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee regarding the appointment of a chairperson to Section 41 Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee. Alan, are there any updates to that? Scott, what do you?
I'm prepared to move if you're ready for it.
Yeah, well, I'm getting it, yeah. Councillor Scott, you're moving it, yeah?
Yes, all 3, don't split them up. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Livingston. Any discussion? Councillor Miller.
I just have a question, Your Worship. What's different to what Mark Laurie's been doing for the last 12 months? And why is it necessary for him to not be the... Why does he have to not be the MCA representative anymore? Is there a reason for that?
Yep, through the Mayor. So the terms of reference for that committee have an independent chair, and that there is a nominated position from the Middleton Town and Foreshore Association and from the Port Elliot Town and Foreshore Improvement Association, the Middleton Community Association it's known now. So they're written into the terms of reference. So one person can't be both. They need to be one or the other, because that's how they're written down within the terms of reference.
Is there any further discussion, Councillor Miller?
I just want to understand the term independent. Then I always interpreted that to be independent of council, as in not a council member, but I'll accept the explanation if that's my correct understanding.
Any further discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. (10.2) is a report from the Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee. It's the draft community engagement plan for Ratalang, Basham Beach Conservation Reserve Master Plan Actions Review. Alan, anything to add to that report? No. There's a recommendation there with 3 dot points. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Miller, you're moving that?
I would like to move it, but I also have some questions which may result in something being added here. I'm interested to know if there's going to be a quick poll proposed with this as well, and if the...
Sorry, through the Mayor, do you mind if I take them one by one? Hand over to General Manager Infrastructure.
Yep, through the Mayor. Can I clarify, could you just explain to me what you think or appreciate as a quick poll is?
So going back to the native grassland naming report, and I'm not speaking now, I'm just clarifying the question that I asked. There was a quick poll on the MySay site of the 3 names that was live, as I understand it, voting. We're using a quick poll for all the actions that are proposed in this as well.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the clarification. I understand that we would. It's part of a suite of tools that we now have available to us, having moved to a new platform. So I would guess we would be, yes.
My next question is on where it says the engagement plan says 5 years since the plan was adopted. Given it's taken us 2 years to get to this point, that should actually read 7, if that can be please changed. And can the reason for the proposed change in the table have that it's the committee's reason for the proposed change? And can we also have a bit of a legend that defines what is high, medium and low? Because we're asking people to say whether they support a change from medium to low, but I hope it's clear when we're asking them that question that high is 0 to 2 years, medium is 2 to 10 years, and low is 10 to 20 years.
Councillor Miller, did you want, because you're moving the motion, did you want to capture your proposed changes at point 2 where it's saying release to community consultation, add attachment 1 contained in the meeting agenda with the following amendments, and us to capture?
I'm hoping they're just minor administrative factual changes, but yes, okay.
Unless General Manager Infrastructure, they administration changes, or do I need to capture them within a resolution?
Through the Mayor, and for the benefit of other staff that are in the room that can help capture this information. So to reiterate, changing the 5 years to 7 years as it's up to date in terms of time frame. Adding in to a paragraph above the table that it's the committee that have reviewed the master plan recommendations and are making these recommendations, and that within the table itself we would add the current priority levels of those actions as they sit within the master plan.
Well, I'm actually just asking for a legend, because I'm assuming the question that's going to be asked of people is, do you support this being changed from a medium to a low? And there's 5 of those, I think. So what I'm asking for is to define what medium means and what low means. That's all. I'm not asking to change anything else. I just wanted to understand what a quick poll was. I wanted to understand that it's been 7 years, not 5 years, since the review's been done or the community's been asked, and that it's the committee's reasons for a change, not the council's. It's a recommendation of... And that's just adding a word, because it says in the table reason for change, because that's important. It's just adding... It's neither the here nor there. I really don't mind if it's added or not. I just think it's important that it's council's not recommending this change. We're going to consultation on the changes that the committee is recommending. It's a small nuance, but it's important.
Through the Mayor, I think we can make that clarity. We can make that quite clear in terms of where that's come from. I'm quite comfortable with all of those, and thank you for clarifying that last one for me.
If I may speak now, Your Worship. I'm really interested to hear what the community has, and I'm delighted that the committee has seen merit in asking the community. These are significant changes to an adopted plan that's had the community hasn't been engaged with about changes to them. All of the actions proposed to be removed relate to public or visitor access or engagement. The master plan underwent extensive consultation back in 2017, and it achieves in its current form a balance of environmental conservation objectives with public access and amenity provision. Removing the actions proposed places a much higher priority on conservation at the cost of public access and amenity. The same applies to the actions proposed to change from medium, which after 7 years should have been approaching completion by now, but they haven't been started. And so if they weren't started in the past 7 years, it's unlikely they'll be given any priority if they move to low in the next 10 to 20 years. And this is not about I'm not questioning the committee. What I'm questioning is why, when there was an action plan that had medium and high priorities, they've not been actioned in 7 years. I find that quite stunning, and now we're going to just remove them altogether. And in the 3 years that I've been on council, it's only a low priority action that's received the most attention, and now is the highest priority of all. I think that decision should have undergone community consultation because it significantly altered the community land and what it's used for. That's probably really all I have to say. I'm delighted, absolutely delighted, that the community is going to get some input into this, and I look forward to hearing their responses. Thank you.
So do we have a seconder? Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you, Your Worship. May I also ask a question just around the engagement plan with stakeholders? Sorry, I'm still scrolling down. Stakeholders that will be invited directly to consider contributing. We've got a range of community groups, which is excellent. I just wondered if it would be possible or would it be resource intensive to identify a number of local residents that live around, because I know there are not that many, and I do often get feedback from members of our community during public consultations where there are residents that live very close to something happening, and they say, well, you know, would it have been so hard for council to advise me via sort of something in my letterbox? So I just wonder if that had been considered and would be possible.
So do we have a...
Through the Mayor. It is actually in the section under section 3, who. There is the residents and ratepayers section, and adjoining property owners and business owners are identified in there. No, it wouldn't be an impulse for us to ensure that those directly adjacent residents are sent information to advise them of the consultation. That we can do.
May I just clarify that Alan, that you're talking about directly adjoining, not further afield, to clarify that.
Any further discussion? Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 10.3 is a report from the Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee, Dune erosion mitigation at Sandy Bay, Port Elliot. Alan, is there anything to add to that report? And there's a recommendation there with 3 dot points. Move Councillor Livingston. Second, Councillor Maidment. Is there any discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I have questions first. Can we just confirm what stage 2 is comprised of? Because if you read the agenda item, it suggests that it's detailed design for 3 scenarios. Is that what stage 2 is?
Through the Mayor, probably the term detailed design doesn't quite fit in this scenario because it's a if you think about what's happening with Horseshoe Bay and the wave modelling study that's going on at the moment, you would have seen the iteration of that technical assessment as it's gone through, and you have consulted as a council, or we have consulted as a council on stage 2 level information. So this is about progressing the initial assessment to stage 2, which would bring it to a point which would be comparable with the Horseshoe Bay wave modelling information, ready for, subject to further consideration by council, ready for community consultation.
My next question is this asking for an open checkbook? Because there's no indication of how much progressing to this modelling will cost. And it says that the cost will be advised to the committee, but there's no reference to telling council. And as far as I understand, the committee's only an advisory committee. They don't have any delegated authority to expend funds. So I did read the agenda item and it said the costings weren't available at that time. I'm just wondering if we've got an indicative cost now.
Through the men, no, I still haven't got that information to be able to provide. The reasons for wanting to be able to move on this, I think the committee have expressed those, and we've tried to reflect those in the report. What I would say is that whilst the committee doesn't have financial delegation, I do, as the trustee for the fund, so I can action that on their behalf and from council's behalf. So this is about council's commitment to undertaking stage 2 of that work, noting that this would all be subject to a procurement process. So depending on the level depending on the costings that we get back will depend on how we approach that in terms of having them to procure that work. So we start to follow our own internal processes around how we procure it, but this is just to get the commitment and the direction of council to allow that to happen once we have that information. Without that in place, then we would definitely be waiting until February next year before the committee would be back together again to be able to discuss that. We could organise a special committee meeting, but again, that won't happen this side of Christmas. That would be in January, and even then, given people's leave, likely it would be nearer February than it would be early January.
Next question is, on page 212, under financial implications, it seems to suggest that administration is somewhat aware of an anticipated cost and that it won't be an ongoing cost. So have we got a ballpark figure? Are we talking hundreds of thousands of dollars or $25,000? Do we have any idea? I mean, I'm just conscious that we're going to authorise funds without having any idea of what it's going to cost.
Through the Mayor, it's a completely fair point, and I can't give any further information on that. I don't know what that will be. So no, truthfully, I cannot say with any confidence what that might be at this stage. The reason, so coming back to it, the reason why that wasn't provided at the time and why it's taken time to do that is because of the changes because of the way in which the committee then structured what it wanted to look at. So from stage 1, looking at the report, a number of different scenarios were initially assessed. But what they need to do as far as stage 2 is concerned, they had to draw down on that, focus on what they needed to focus on, and that has been determined, but I haven't been advised that the consultant in this instance has provided a quotation for that work.
So is there any discussion? Councillor Coomans.
Look, I just have a question in relation to 3 and use of the Basham Beach Trust Fund. Does the committee get an opportunity to support or approve that, or is it essentially administration will be doing that?
Through the Mayor, you'll see in the committee minutes that the committee was the one that made that recommendation and provided the opportunity for those costs to be supported by the trust fund. So yes, they've already made that decision, well, they've made that determination and recommending that moving forward. Again, the reason why this has moved at pace is because of the degradation that is occurring in that location, and they're concerned about wanting to move as quickly as practically possible in order to get some sort of defence or other outcome in place as soon as possible.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to add some additional comments from being at that meeting. The topic of how much progressing to stage 2 would cost was a point of conversation at the end of our meeting after we had heard from the consultants, because it wasn't outlined in black and white, and the committee are very concerned about ensuring that funds are spent very responsibly and with value for money. So I actually recall, and I will absolutely stand corrected when it does come back to us, but I recall a number, something like $15,000 to progress this stage 2, and I believe that's why the committee was comfortable going ahead and saying, look, we're recommending to the chamber that we approve the use of the trust funds to go to that next step, because it was seen as quite a reasonable number to take that next step, but with the proviso that the number does come back to us first. So certainly not an open checkbook, that the number does come back first and there's opportunity to say, oh, look, that's actually far more, or outside of what the estimate was. So yeah, just to add a bit of background. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just slightly concerned. I'm sure this will get supported, but I won't be supporting it. I don't see why we can't wait until the 19th of January, have a hard and fast, or have an indicative cost. It's public funds, whether it's in the trust or not. I'd be more comfortable if this resolution said something about, with the expenditure, acknowledge that, and that the General Manager Infrastructure has the delegated authority to progress the expenditure of the funds, because if you read that in isolation, it just talks about, doesn't matter what the cost is, it's going ahead, and I'm not comfortable with that as someone administering public funds. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Apologies, Your Worship. I just had a question following on from Councillor Miller's comment there. Would the trustee not ultimately have the final say once that number came back anyway, regardless of whether it's written into the motion? The trustee of the account does have the final authority to approve or not. Am I correct?
Yeah, through the Mayor, I understand that is correct. That said, an adjustment like that to the resolution does ensure that that role undertakes that function.
Is any further discussion? No, so I put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Anybody against? Against? It's carried. (11) is council member reports. 11.1 is presiding members report for November 2025. There's a recommendation that that report be received and noted. Moved Councillor Livingston. Seconded Councillor Oliver. Are any questions or comments relating to that report? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 11.2 is Council Member Activity Report. We've got a report from Councillor Gardner. Recommendation that be received and noted. So it's a mover for that. Councillor Nicholson. Seconder, Councillor Maidman. Any questions of Councillor Gardner or anything regarding her report? No. So I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 11.3 is Council Member Activity Report, verbal updates. So there's a recommendation that we note those. Are there any verbal updates, things you've done, not just if, as a councillor in your duty as councillor? Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Mayor Parks. In my capacity as a council member, I've got two items that I'd like to raise, and they do relate to me as a council member. One is in relation to the Goolwa pageant on the 7th of December. The Goolwa Community Association organised this and asked me to bring the Mount Compass Santa sleigh to their pageant for their Santa's use in the event, which I was happy to do, and in fact provided the towing tractor, which is my red car. The pageant had about 55 floats, which involved some 400 to 500 participants, but few of the sporting clubs that council has spent a fortune on with their particular facilities. The streets were filled with happy kids, 4 to 5 deep, and the families, who were so happy and grateful for the procession. But what I found very disappointing was where was the Alexandrina Council, given the procession passed by the council office in the main street and because of what should be council's overall importance in the region. Very little of any street decorations, and the group decorated the train carriage. No float exhibiting council's prominence in the town. The only financial contribution of $10,000 to cover some of the needed road closures. They made the group write to 520 locations in town to advise them of the road closures, which cost them $3,000, and no financial assistance other than some help with permits. Council did a street sweep along the main road the day after the pageant. So I would like to suggest that council get behind the pageant next year to ensure that council plays its part in important physically and financially with the pageant for next year. It was a fantastic show. Number 2, a vote of thanks. As an elected member, I'd like to take this opportunity to specifically thank the engineering staff of Council for the focus on Mount Compass over the past month or so. Council has been the target of serious objections in the way in which the Nankita roadworks have been conducted over the many years, with issues like ongoing delays, melting asphalt, potholes, speed reductions, and allegations of low quality work. During this process, many other issues were raised by residents, including disabled access to the school pedestrian lights, potholes in Sandmine Road, restricted access to properties fronting the Roadman's Reserve on Victor Harbour Road, and overgrown verges. I wrote to the CEO in November and asked for responses to the issues raised. I received these a little later, but in the meantime the following occurred. The reserve along the whole of the Victor Harbour Road was beautifully mowed and clipped. Sandmine Road stormwater issues were fixed, as were potholes and an entrance to a sandmine. Roadman's Reserve dirt driveway was graded and shaped, providing better access to adjacent properties. Surveyors looked at the access to the school pedestrian crossing, and we might need to ask for some finance to fix the issues for wheelchair access. I also observed that DIT conducted vehicle counts at the corner of Victor Harbour Road and Nankita Road, and this was the issue was raised in this chamber last month. So overall, on behalf of the Compass community and the positive comments I received, thank you to Alan Harvey, General Manager Infrastructure, and his team on a job well done.
Are there any further reports? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to acknowledge Eastern Fleurieu School and their Year 10 girls who won the gold medal at the Australian Volleyball Schools Cup this week. It's been 6 years since Eastern Fleurieu School have sent any students to the volleyball championships. These are Australian volleyball championships. and the first year they've ever submitted a girls' team. They were undefeated for the whole tournament and were wonderful ambassadors for the school and the townships that they come from. And I just would like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Any further? Councillor Scott.
Just very quickly, two things. One, I went, I know it's over a month ago, but I went to the Remembrance Day service at Port Elliot, and I have to say it was one of the best services that I have ever been to. It was well managed, it was succinct, and it had all the elements that you could ever imagine, Air Force cadets, Army cadets, etc., and an extremely good address. And credit to the Port Elliot RSL for managing that. The other thing is that I just want to report that the acting principal of the Port Elliot Primary School has been appointed full-time, Kathy Knight, and I went to their Year 6 graduation, bearing in mind, of course, they now go on to high school, and I was struck by the manner in which the school runs and the preparation that those students have had to move on to high school was extremely creditable and worthy of note. And I just want to mention that we are extremely fortunate to have a primary school of that quality and calibre in our council area, especially in West Ward. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Anything further? No? So I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Yeah, need a mover. Councillor Nicholson. Seconder, Councillor Livingston. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. So we go to item 12, which is confidential items.
South Coast Television, your community, your voice.